guys, how you doing? 3, 2, 1. And we're streaming on TikTok too. So we're going to see how this is going to go, right? Over the last week, I was having a lot of difficulty with my internet connection because I think perhaps it's just a problem with the tech. Perhaps it's that I had a tech in, and yesterday I just did a YouTube stream, and so that worked out really nicely. Nice and clean, nothing went down. But he said that I might need to just increase the amount of upload speed and upload space I have. So we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. Chances are good that this will all fail and I'll have to collapse it and all that kind of stuff. But we're here. We're streaming. I hope you guys are doing well out in the world. I hope you guys are doing well out in the world. We're all here trying to struggle with this ridiculous nonsense that is our lives. We've got a protest coming up. The Ford government has done almost nothing to fix the crisis in our hospitals. Stip, good to see you, bud. And so people are organizing protests. We got one in Niagara. This is Friday, December 9th, so this Friday in Niagara, 12 p.m., 4th Avenue and 1st Street. In Ottawa, same time, 550 Smith Road. Monday, December 12th, protest Toronto, 12 p.m., 585 University Avenue, and in Windsor, 12 p.m., beside Windsor Hospital. This is all coordinated by Ontario Health Coalition. Yeah, they're privatizing the system, right? They're privatizing the system. They're privatizing the model. We're going to essentially regress here in Ontario to a far worse system. And it's just going to get worse over time. Yeah, USA hospital system are the worst. Yeah, the outcomes are the worst, you pay the most. And that's the model that Doug Ford is bringing in to Ontario, because it benefits a small group of psychos, right? Al Godmonic. Never seen you here before. Hope you're here to be beautiful, mate. You have a nice beard. Thank you. Thank you. I know. And it's going to get nicer over time, you guys. If you think this beard is nice, you just wait. You just wait. I literally went and got some beard cream. And apologies if you can hear construction in the background. There's construction going on just literally outside my door here. So I'm sorry if that's picking it up. I did get my beard trimmed. Yeah, thank you very much. It was going very wild man. It was going very like wild man. And so I thought to myself, maybe I should add some intention to this. And what I'm always trying to lean towards, I don't look it right now because I'm just wearing a shitty t-shirt. I should do better for the stream, honestly, for dressing up. But the style that I'm going for is wizard chic. Trying to get more wizardly, trying to get my hair, trying to get the hair down here. I want to get the hair length so it's really like on my chest and all that. But today was a day off. I went and did some random stuff, picked up some random things, went for a lovely walk along the beach, right? As a communist, do you support Israel or Palestine? Palestine. It's usually a good one to, like, if you want to see the truth about what happened in what's called Israel today, you want to look for Abby Martin's absolute masterpiece, Gaza Fights for Freedom. That Abby Martin, like, literally created a masterpiece, something that is powerful, potent, very, very epic in scale and scope, and precise and accurate. And Gaza Fights for Freedom, you can find it online. You literally type into Google, Gaza Fights for Freedom. I've shown it on my live stream at one point. And if you watch Gaza Fights for Freedom and you walk away still thinking that Israel's great and we should fight on behalf of Israel, then you're a Nazi. And you might as well just admit it to yourself and everybody around you. It's conclusive. That's the word that I would use for it. Conclusive. And I mean, the post-World War II, the Israelis moved in to Palestinian territories and basically just pushed people into camps and pushed people out of their areas and pushed people, like, it's an apartheid. Like, that's what it is. Like, there's no other word to use for it. And the Israeli strategy, right? The is the Israeli strategy is just to continue the ethnic cleansing, is to destroy the Palestinians. That's the strategy. Stip says, bro, the allies of World War II, mostly Britain, sent many Jews to live in Jerusalem, and today Israel and Palestine, and they support Israel now, so yeah. Dude, I know. Like, the West is fascist. Like, I'm pretty upfront about that. Like, I'm a communist living in the heart of the imperial core. Like, that's the truth of what's going on in the world today. That the people who are standing up and saying, yeah, we need to support Israel, and all this kind of stuff, yeah, like, America is a fascist country. Like, it's I feel like just today, the Some More News guy, Cody Johnson, released a thing about, like, what is fascism and all this kind of stuff. He kind of dances around it and all this, because he's accurate when he says there isn't a consensus on the definition of fascism, but, like, we need to stop being, like, total losers about this. Right? Like, if what we are currently living under is not specifically and perfectly defined as fascism, it's just as bad. Like, it's just as bad. Like, I'm sure that the Afghani people and the Iraqi people and the Palestinian people really, really care that the missiles that are being dropped on them are being done by, oh, it's an oligarchy. No, it's an inverted totalitarian. No, I'm sure that it really matters. It really makes a difference to those people. That the CIA death squads that are going through are actually just authoritarian. They're not fascist, right? Like, I'm happy calling this a fascist country. If you want to get lost in the weeds on it, you can go ahead, but you're never going to change my mind. And moreover, I don't think it matters if you play this game of technicality, right? Like, we are as bad as the Nazis ever were. What we are doing is as bad as what anything that they ever did, and we should stop. We should stop. We're not going to, obviously, but we should. USA supports freedom so much they are suppressing people in other nations. Well, Stip, when the U.S. First of all, Ligon Dizzy, good to see you. If leftists support Israel, they've never been a real leftist yet. Conton, always a pleasure. And Prodigal, wonderful to see you here too, bud. What the USA means when it says freedom, right? And it's the same thing that the libertarians mean when they say freedom, is the freedom to oppress others. Anemone, good to see you. Like, that's the freedom that they're talking about. What the United States means when it says you should be free to own slaves. You should be free to sell yourself to capitalists. Like, we should maximize the freedom of the individual to engage in slave systems. That's the freedom that the United States and the libertarian right are talking about when they say freedom. That we should have the freedom to engage as cleanly as possible in the process of buying and selling one another. I think that is a very perverse and strange idea of what freedom should actually be, right? And what freedom actually represents. Yeah, I mean, Prodigal says, I hate American healthcare. Just ambulance rides cost 500 USD minimum. It's just awful. Well, and it's a perfect way to absolutely put your society into a death spiral, right? Like, what America has done and is continuing to do is trading in all of the assets and institutions that actually matter, like physical things, material things that actually matter and improve the quality of life for citizens, right? They're trading all that in for money they invented. Like, that's what the profit motive is. Let's take all of these, the industrial base of the country, any idea of public service, anything that's for a collective good, and trade it away for paper dollars we invented in the first place. And it's a disaster. It's always going to be a disaster. It's going to continue being a disaster. And here in Ontario, we're doing everything we can to duplicate that, right? Just so it puts your country in a death spiral because you lose all of the things that actually make your country good, and you gain nothing. Like, literally, some guys just get extra money dollars in their account somewhere, and that's it. And they don't generally turn around and spend that on their community. They generally turn around and do something like erect a pedophile sex island with Jeffrey Epstein on it, right? Like, it's the nature of who we are, right? It's the nature of who we are. Got a really nice one here. Yeah, this is your reminder that Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty 327 days ago of child trafficking, and not one predator that paid to be on an island with minors has had their name released, their home raided, or been arrested. So I think the hope of the upper class was always that, oh, we'll put Ghislaine Maxwell in jail, and then that's something we can point at to say that justice happened. But we all know that's false. Like, we all know that the upper class is involved in this. Like, if you are a billionaire, if you're part of that Bill Gates, Warren Buffett sort of class, we all know they're all in on it. And the fact that none of their names are being released, there is no prosecution, there's nothing going on, tells you basically everything you need to know about this country. And that it's completely indefensible. Like, you can't defend this anymore. It's not possible to defend this any longer. And so we should stop. I support Palestine, but Israel did offer peace twice, but of course not accepted because Israel would steal land. I mean, yeah, no, it's not genuine, Stip. Like, that's like saying, like, I kicked in your door and came in your house and kicked you out of your house and then said, whoa, we should have peace. Like, that's not genuine. Like, that's not a real thing. That's not serious. Prodigal says, also for fire and EMS personnel, how do you think they should get played? In the U.S., most departments are volunteer-based. We don't get paid, and if we do, it's really low. I mean, it should be run by the state, and the state should be responsive to the needs of the people. Like, the core flaw of what is happening in America is that the system was never designed to respond to the people. It was never designed for that. That's the long and short of it. That the system was designed to make sure the power stays within the hands of the wealthy. It's literally in the document. Like, read the document. That the entire point, James Madison stated it in the document, that the entire point is to ensure that power remains in the wealth of the nation. That the rich run the place. Because they didn't want the populace to be ever able to vote wealth away from this small minority slaveholding class. Like, that was the whole point, right? Like, if you actually have a democracy, if you actually do democracy, well, one of the first things that people are going to do is say, well, wait a minute, why is there a bunch of really rich people and a bunch of really poor people, right? We should do something to ameliorate that. And because the massive poor vastly outnumber the tiny minority of slaveholders, it would happen very easily and very swiftly. And so they needed to create a system to prevent that. And they did it, and it's successful. And here we are, living in it, right? The American system of democracy does not respond to the needs of the populace. And it is as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. And so, of course, they're never going to erect any kind of system that pays people to do public service work, right? Of course, they're never going to do that because it doesn't benefit them. DM, good to see you, bud. Good hump day evening, John. Glad to see you back on TikTok. So far, so good with TikTok. So far, so good. We'll see. I might need to just do some changes on the back end, but so far, so good. I see that the Ronnie McNutt stuff has stopped, so my viewership on TikTok is way down. But I don't know. I think it makes for a calmer sort of a thing, a calmer kind of environment. Really, that Ronnie McNutt stuff was wild, dude. That was really wild. But it did make my viewership like go through the roof. Like, it made my viewership insane. So we'll see. Be sure to like it, to share it, to subscribe it, to do all that kind of stuff, guys. Content says, I think what they mean by freedom is the ability to have an abundant life while not really putting in any work. Freedom is just passable income with lack of inconvenience. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would consider that, like, personally for myself, I would consider that a certain degree of freedom. That, like, if I had enough income to just have a roof over my head and food, and it didn't require any time for that, I would consider that freedom. That then I could actually take the only resource that actually matters, which is our time, and I could use my time on things that I would consider valuable, useful, or at least interesting, right? And right now, what the vast majority of us are doing is wasting our time doing dumb shit for rich people who so that when rich people go places, they can get little snack bars and shit. Like that's really what's going on, and it's dumb and stupid and annoying what we're all engaged in. The funny thing is, I would rather have Germany win World War II and massacre my people rather than live in a world that's run by Russia and USA. That's a weird thing to say, dude. I'm just going to put that out there, bud. That's kind of a weird thing to say. I understand the sentiment, but, like, no, I think Germany winning World War II would probably be a bad thing for everybody. I think it was probably a good thing that the communists won. Like, I think it was probably a good thing that the Russian communism and the Soviets were able to win that war. Stips, justice is actually arresting criminals, not arresting random people billionaires do not like. Yeah, absolutely. CR Strifey, are people who do a service in exchange for cash part of the capitalist system? I mean, we're all part of the capitalist system, right? Like that the complaint that's coming out of communism is that the workers don't own the systems that they work in. That's the problem. And so we're just receiving like a stipend. We're receiving like a little tiny shred of the labor value that we put in for basically like food and shelter. Like that's essentially what I get. Like I get food and shelter and then like a little bit extra to have like a little bit of like I can buy a bottle of wine so that on my day off I can get drunk. Like that's essentially the structure of the system, right? That's the structure of the piece. And communists think that we can do better. Macedonia used to be a striving nation. I have no idea what word that is, dude. Being a powerhouse, now we have a corrupt government thanks to the USA and NATO. Yeah, of course. Well, Macedonia is not very large, right? So it'd be easy to overwhelm. Hey, Radio, how you doing, bud? DM says CRA now admits they goofed with handing out CERB to criminals and unqualified people. Look, man, like what the CRA is trying to do is they're going after the poor, right? They're going after the poor. So instead of going after like doing an audit on someone like Galen Weston or David Thompson and finding out like, hey, how did they extract so much wealth and so much power and so much prestige, right? Like instead of that, they're just going to go after poor people who can't defend themselves, right? And honestly, the smartest thing, and of course we're not a smart people, but the smartest thing would be to just say, okay, so you gave some CERB to some people, right? And who didn't deserve it. Okay. Well, those people are spending that on rent anyway. They're spending that on commodities that are owned by corporations anyway, right? So oh no, maybe someone who was quote unquote undeserving managed to get a fucking Big Mac or something one time, or managed to pay a month's rent or something, and it didn't collapse their life into a shithole, right? Like oh fucking no, right? That this is the complaint of the upper class, is that the poor got a reprieve from the system of extraction for a moment. And so now the system needs to double down and continue the policies of extraction. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Prodigal says America is based in irony. This country was founded by slave owners who wanted to be free. Yeah. yeah. Not passable income, passive income. Yeah, I mean, it's freedom to them after being inconvenienced by work. They get to exist passively. I mean, we have created, it's sort of this really odd thing where we've created this society where we have all of this abundance. Like we've got all of this stuff and we've got all of, like we've built all of these institutions and we've built all of these structures, right? Any rational, sane nation would ensure that these structures remain in place and they remain stable to continuously unify the people, continuously unify the nation, right? Keep us moving on this kind of thing. And like, but it's the famous phrase, like, what is it? I can't think of the exact phrase, but it's like automated gay luxury communism, right? Like if you've got robots making everything, like I came from a rural town, right? And that rural town, right? That rural town was a farming community, and literally like in 1940, It took the majority of the populace in order to produce food, right? And then automation happened, and tractors came in, and the whole process gets automated, so that now it takes 2% of the population, right? Like, this is a dramatic shift in what labor is required to actually produce the goods that we need. So instead of it being 80% of the populace working and farming, it's 2%. And so what do you do? What do you do with that percentage of people, that 78% of the population? What do you do with them? How do they even get access? What labor can they sell to who, to do what? And so I think we're just falling into a state of total confusion over and over and over again, because we're just making up bullshit to do to justify existing and being alive, because the rulers of our society find it abhorrent that someone would just exist, right? Even though if we could build a society that produced food from nothing, like literally replicators from Star Trek, right? Like that would be the most abhorrent thing to capitalists, if we could just create food and everybody had shelter and everything was fine. To capitalists, this is a disaster, right? Because you can't create a desperate population and exploit them to make dumb shit that doesn't matter, right? Like, oh no, how dare people just live in the world and try to enjoy the time that they have here, right? Like, it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Random thought. Good to see you grinning. Grinning says, random thought, lesser evil harm reduction voters essentially admit that they would vote for Trump if the other candidate was worth... Well, and now we're honestly, Grinning, we're at a point now where the lesser evil is just a matter of opinion at this stage in the game, right? Like, this idea of lesser evil voting. Like, is Trump actually worse than Biden? Like, if you look at their record, not really. Like, but Biden literally, like, year one was bombing Somalia, bombing Ethiopia, right? Like, I think the Democrats are largely more insidious and slimy. That Republicans are fairly upfront with how shitty they are, right? Whereas Democrats will lie and pretend like they're not shitty and then be as shitty or worse than the Republicans. So, like, if two guys came up to you and said, and one of them said, I'm most definitely going to punch you in the face, and the other guy said, I'm not going to punch you in the face, and then you said, well, I'm going to pick the guy who said he's not going to punch me in the face, and then the very first thing he did was punch you in the face, right? Is that make him a lesser evil? I would actually consider that to be far worse, because, you know, then you get sucker punched and you don't see it coming. Whereas if you pick the guy who says, I'm going to punch you in the face, and you go, okay, I'll pick you, and then he comes over and punches you in the face, well, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. Well, what does that mean? It means that when Republicans stand up and say things, it means that, okay, you could probably believe it most of the time. Because even though what they're saying is abhorrent and shitty and crazy, at least it's what they believe, and they're going to do it. Whereas the Democrats are literally just like, I want power. What, I can say this to you and you'll vote for me? Okay, I'll say that. And then they'll do whatever they want. And so you just never know what they're going to do. That's how Obama was. That's how Bill Clinton was. That's how Biden is. Like, they're all like that. So I don't buy into this lesser evil idea, like this lesser evilism. It's totally fucking bullshit, honestly. TikTok's wild, man. Sometimes I look over and there's like 10 people, and then sometimes I look over and there's like 121. It's crazy. Like, I don't understand how it works at all, but there it is. Hope you're all doing well on TikTok. Like, share, subscribe, hit all the things, hit all the bells, hit all the whistles, do the diamonds, do all that kind of stuff. If you want to have an adult conversation and get out of this ridiculous chat where people are saying things like, go back to China then, like you're a smart guy, you come over to YouTube and have an adult conversation with an adult. All right. What the heck kind of name is this? Oh, yeah, okay. I'll just say Shu. It's tough some days to get motivated to fight back when I think of the sheer control of the Olive Garden. That's a funny thing to say, dude. The sheer control of the Olive Garden. The overwhelming control. Fully automated luxury gay space communism. Thanks, Anemone. I appreciate that. Oh no, my phone is protecting the oligarchy and using the Olive Garden as a shield. Bro, Shu is just saying random bullshit in chat, but I don't know. It's something about Olive Garden really made it funny. I do have a Discord. If you look in the description here and donate $1 to my Patreon, that will get you into the Discord. I don't just let random people into Discord. I have a tiering of vetting that happens before I let people get into the inner sanctum of the Discord, because you see how the internet is, right? You see how the internet is. Anti-pasta action? Nice looking these. Nice. So, one of the big news stories that's going on today that I keep seeing is this morning in Germany, 130 homes raided, caches of weapons seized, 52 arrested, as a mix of pro-Russian nuts, QAnon nuts, former AfD members, former East German military nuts, descendants of German nobility, all planned a violent coup. So the crazy, like, January 6th energy of let's overthrow the place, right, has spread, right? It has spread into the the rest of the Western world, right? And it's because it's a problem of capitalism. It's how capitalism rolls, right? It just doesn't seem to know how to prevent these sorts of overthrows or coups from happening. I just realized TikTok's slightly ahead of the YouTube stream. Yeah, what can you do? An opinion most people would ignore: communism was one of the reasons monarchists fell. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. Like, some of the monarchs have managed to sort of make a transition. Like, the British monarchy is a great example of that. They really managed to transition well with capitalism and managed to kind of go along with capitalism. And which just shows you that, like, capitalism's not really, like, a moral ideology. It's just like, where is power, who has power, right? And if it's a king that has power, then okay, well, that's the person who has power. Whereas communists are more like, no, like, fuck you, kings, like monarchs, get the fuck out of here. Axe Jax, love that name, dude. Axe Jax, wonderful. Hope you're here to be beautiful, bud. Are you more of a Discord or Reddit guy? The Discord is what I use internally, and the hope for the Discord is to begin to organize more seriously locally, right? Like, so things like this that I show on the thing where on the stream where I'm trying to show that there's a protest going on as organized by the Ontario Health Coalition against the privatization of the systems, right? So Niagara, 12 p.m. Let me know if anybody is actually here, and we'll be more specific. We got Niagara, Ottawa, Toronto, Windsor. We got protests planned for those sorts of things, and I'm trying to get kind of a core group and to help people find other people to go and protest in more serious ways and to spread information around. And that's what I do on the Discord. Reddit I use for just information harvesting, right? I don't exclusively use Reddit for that, but that's basically what Reddit is for me. So a lot of the links that you'll see just come from a lot of the places I follow on Reddit. And and again, if you want to be part of the Discord, just donate $1 to the Patreon. More if you're in a blessed mood, and I'll get you on in. Shu, sorry if you've answered this before. I probably have, bud, but that's what I'm here for. That's the game. How should we think and participate in our current democratic system if politicians have abandoned us? Canadian here, by the way. We should organize with one another locally, with the understanding that our politicians have abandoned us and are exclusively harvesting us to vote for them in the vanity project that is their own ascension in the ranks of that hierarchy. That the electoral system in Canada and the United States currently only exists exclusively as vanity projects for the people who are within the Congress or the Senate or the House or whatever. And those people are not actually genuinely interested in helping us. They're not interested in pursuing, like, if they are talking a game, like AOC is like this, where she talks a game where she wants to, like, oh, I feel your pain, we're going to help you. That's just her brand, She's not actually doing that. She's not actually interested in that. And so the goal for us now is to organize locally, create local institutions with one another, mutual aid systems that are outside of the capitalist structure, and to create protest movements. Because the only way that the capitalists actually end up responding to the people is when the people surround the halls of power. That's historically been the truth. That FDR doesn't put in the New Deal because he's a nice man. He puts in the New Deal because there's thousands of people outside of his workplace calling for revolution. Same story with Nixon. Nixon doesn't put the EPA in because he's a good man. He puts the EPA in because there's thousands of people outside of his door. Like, the people in positions of power will only respond to mass popular uprisings. It's the only time in capitalist history anything has ever gone to the left ever. And that includes the labor movement, that includes the unionist movement, right? That includes all of that, the civil rights movement, all of it. There is literally no such thing as a politician standing up and saying, I'm going to do something for the people and help the people out, and then actually following through with that. It's just literally not how the system works. It's not how it's designed to work. It's not what it does. And so our goal as Canadians and Americans and Westerners generally is to create local solidarity movements and local mutual aid groups that are independent from the electoral system, and then gather en masse at the halls of power in order to put pressure on elected officials to actually do what we say. And because right now the system is completely unresponsive, and that's literally like Princeton studies coming out. That's not just like internet kook guy being like, nobody listens to the people anymore. Like, forget that, right? Like, every time the issue has been studied by the highest academia in the country, the response is the system doesn't respond anymore. That literally the people who win the elections are the people with the most money, and the people who those elected officials respond to are their donors. And that's it. That's the end of the story. And so to pretend like there's something else going on, I think is Looney Tunes. Is absolutely Looney Tunes and absolutely crazy. And we have to acknowledge that in the West, the system is completely corrupted. Like, it cannot be reformed. It cannot be fixed. You're not going to suddenly elect a group of people. You're not going to suddenly make a new party. You're not going to suddenly put anything together. None of that is going to happen, because the system has corrupted itself so badly to prevent it from occurring. It will never go down that way, and it's fundamentally the truth in America, especially. In America, especially, like the level of the corruption is built into the system, and it can't be reformed. Like, they literally need to redraw their constitution. Like, that's how bad it is in America, and that's just not going to happen. Like, not as I see it right now. Hillary Clinton is now the new leader of the Ontario NDP. It's not Hillary Clinton. I forget her name, but it's another like weak NDP. Like, who cares? Like, the NDP are just these weak, limp. They exist so that should the populace actually go, we got to get rid of these conservatives, and they swing to the left, they'll swing to the NDP, and then the NDP will raise taxes on wealthy people by 0.3%, call it a massive socialist victory, and the means of production will remain firmly in the hands of the capitalist class, and that's what will happen. Like, the NDP are controlled dissent. That's what they're there for. They're there to play this AOC style game of we feel your pain, head tilting, saying aw, wear a white dress that says tax the rich, and then when you get into power, just keep voting along with the capitalists. Like, that's how they operate. That's how they work, right? February 2022, Trudeau, we arrest protesters in Canada. November 2022, Trudeau, we stand with protesters in China. Hypocrisy at its worst. Yeah, I mean, it's going to get most obvious in the UK first, the UK is literally banning protest. Not only are they banning protest, but they're also making it so that if you've ever gone to a protest in the last 5 years, they can arrest you. So, like, that's as fascist as anything. Like, I don't know what you need to see before you start saying, like, yep, country's fucked. Like, literally rounding up protesters, rounding up people who plan protest, so me, like, I could literally just get my door kicked in and have all of my equipment seized and get sent just for showing this picture, which is a protest organized by the Ontario Health Coalition. And the Ontario Health Coalition could get rounded up. Like, that's what's happening in the UK, right? So when we talk about a descent into fascism, like, it's right in front of your faces. It's right in front of your... If you've ever asked yourself, what would I have done in Nazi Germany? You know exactly what you would have done in Nazi Germany. You're doing it right now. You're doing it right now. That's exactly how you would have acted. It's exactly who you are. It's exactly what would have happened. 1 second, guys. I'm just having a little problem with my phone. Just gonna... Hopefully. Oh, that messes everything up, doesn't it? Oh, and that messes all that up, because now I got this, and we're going to close that. And then that messes this up, because it's this. It's just a series of balancing acts. And I need to do this. And we're back. Oh, no. Go away. Perfect. Perfect. Everything is completely fine 100% of the time. Are you optimistic we'll see a meaningful change in our generation? We'll see a change. One of the things that keeps me going, Shu, is the recognition that the boomers will die. And I don't really like to get into like intergenerational politics, because I do think that it is a dividing line. It is a way for people to be divided. But the real truth, and it's a brutal truth to acknowledge, but it's absolutely the case, is that like there is a generation of people who are still kicking around, who still have the vast majority of the wealth, who still have the vast majority of voting power, who still have the vast majority of economic and cultural authority, and that's the boomers, and they're demented. Like, there's just no other way to say it. Like they literally think that climate change is not an issue. They think that they're going to go talk to Jesus. And they're going to die, right? And that by itself is going to create a meaningful change and a meaningful shift, because the systems and the power structure, even the capitalist ones, even the fascist ones, will have to respond to the only people who are here, right? And it's not the boomers. It's not these demented, idiotic, the CIA is the greatest thing ever. Oh, you said the word communism, I'm going to lose my mind. I drank a bunch of lead paint when I was a kid. Boomer types, like, they're going to be gone. And it's just going to be the truth. And so I'm curious to see it. I'm curious to see, what does this world look like without the boomers in it, right? What does the world look like without the boomers in it, you know? And I'm very, very curious to see that. And so that by itself, I don't know if that's optimism. Like, I don't think that I say that that's optimism, but it's the truth. Like, it's just the truth. Oh, keep it nice, Sam. Come on, bud. You don't need to insult. Socialism is the process towards communism, dude. Like, I don't think you actually know anything about the subject, frankly. And if you're gonna stand there and insult me like a child, I don't know why I should take you seriously, right? Like, it's as simple as that. Like, the one of the first steps of growing up and becoming an adult in the world is recognizing that if you nakedly insult people, they don't take you seriously, right? You're a child. That's the hard truth of it. And communism would never work. Okay, because what's happening in China is a total failure, right? What's happening in China is completely not working, right? Like, it's kind of embarrassing, dude. Like, really. Ain't no way this guy's trying to give me life lessons. I don't know. Somebody's got to. You seem like a real weirdo, dude. Simple as that. One day of Warren Buffett wealth gains could cover rail workers' paid sick leave. So we've got the rail worker shit going on right now. Like, one day... Get a job. Dude, I've got 3 jobs. I love it when little kids come in here, like just moronic little children. They have no idea what's going on in the world, and they think they've like slam dunked on people. Like go back to Fortnite. Go back to Fortnite. Grow up. You're just a little kid. How can the communists, Andrew Yoss, I don't know if I've ever seen you here, bud. Hope you're here to be beautiful. How can the communists reconcile the theory of the dwindling and withering away of the state under workers' rule with the situation in Russia where the state grows more powerful and more concentrated and centralized and intervenes to an ever-increasing extent with the private lives of individuals? I mean, first of all, like, the communist project was abandoned in Russia. Let's be as clear as possible. Like, that there is some debate as to when the abandonment happened, but certainly post-Stalin, you got Khrushchev, Gorbachev, that group comes in, and they without a doubt abandoned the project of communism. And that's what I like to say, is that communism didn't collapse in Russia, it was abandoned. And I mean, if I wanted to be nice to that group, I can see why they went the way they went. That this sort of idea took hold amongst the Russian upper class that we should attempt to ameliorate ourselves. We should attempt to connect meaningfully with the West and try to become part of their institutions, right? Become part of the IMF, become part of NATO, become part of the G7, what was at one point the G8, right? And to try to integrate the Russian systems into the Western systems and become part of the West. Because and I think there is a legitimate argument to be said that, like, because by doing that you can be safe from them, right? That like what the largest war that had happened to Russia came from the West, and so if they could somehow integrate themselves and become allies with these people, right, they could prevent that from happening. I can see that argument playing out in a reasonable kind of a way, but in order to do that, they have to abandon the project of communism. And so they do, right? So they do, and so there's no withering away of the state or any of that. That it just straight up gets abandoned. Like, it's not there doesn't need to be a reconciliation, because the whole idea of communism gets abandoned in Russia, and what's happening now has got nothing to do with it, right? It's got, like, we can sort of cross our fingers and hope one day that communism will rise again and that the Soviet Union will reassert itself once again, but it's we'll see. What happens post-Putin is going to be very interesting. Post-Putin Russia is going to be a really interesting place, and it'll be interesting to see who comes up, because Putin really was like the last leader of this guard that was trying to integrate itself into the West, and now that's obviously failed, right? That's obviously not happening, and so now Putin is like he is the first leader of this new Russian era, the BRICS Russia, and Russia's connection to China and the global South. And so Putin is this really fascinating and interesting transitionary leader in that way, where he's transitioned the country away from the West, which is what I think Khrushchev and Gorbachev and Yeltsin and those guys were doing. But he's transitioned away from that, and now he's leaning more towards allying with China and India and Brazil and the BRICS organization, right? And that it's a fascinating time. It's a fascinating time for that to occur, and yeah, we'll see. It's as simple as that. We'll see. We don't know what's going to happen in Russia. We don't know what it's going to look like. And moreover, I don't think they do either, right? It doesn't seem like there is a real, like, ideological or center core of thought that is arising in a meaningful way in Russia and Russian politics. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. And I think Putin will be seen widely as a just kept his hand on the rudder, and he'll be seen as a nationalist. I think that's the bottom line for Putin. Putin will come out, and history will think of him as a nationalist. that his concern was for Russia, and in those terms, I think he's been fairly successful as a leader. So we'll see how it continues, but to touch back with your question, dude, because I went all over the place on that one. The power of the state in Russia, that's tied into the neoliberal project, because Russia attempted to become more neoliberal in order to ingratiate itself to the West, which ultimately failed, right? Which ultimately failed. That the West was never going to ingratiate itself with Russia. It was never going to allow that to happen. And so now we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I also tend to take issue with this idea of the quote unquote dwindling and withering away of the state, because I don't think you can actually do away with the state. That there is always going to be something that is going to be thought of as the state. It is always going to exist. That sure, it should be minimized, but I don't think it can ever go away completely. Like the communist idea of the stateless society, I just don't, especially when you have external threats, like especially when the United States exists as the external threat. I just don't think you can ever do away with the state. And maybe in like a beautiful, like wonderful, everyone's just like living in fields and smelling roses all day long, sure, but that's not what the world is like. All right, thanks for your question, Andrew. Content, it's not our business as modern socialists to concern ourselves with the withering of states. Yeah, we won't live to see it regardless. I mean, and I don't know, like again, like I think that like we have to acknowledge what the state is, what the state function is doing. Is it doing something useful? Like if you're under attack, right? And America will attack you. Like that's pretty clear. And if you don't have a powerful centralized military, a powerful centralized state, you'll be destroyed. That's pretty clear. And I just think that it's whenever I talk, especially anarchists, right, who I respect, they get on this line of stateless society and non-centralized control and all that kind of stuff. And you're just going to get blown away. You're just going to get rolled over, right? It's just the absolute truth about how the world is right now. Like there is a powerful military force in the world that has Nazi level ambitions, and they're just going to destroy everything unless you actually have a powerful centralized state. And it's just the truth, right? And if you can't solve that problem, then I don't really have time for what it is you're saying. The High Ground, never seen you here before here, bud. Hope you're here to contribute in a beautiful way. What ideology do the richest countries in the world follow? I mean, it's a death cult. It's what we're doing is psychotic, dude. Like, but if you wanted to keep it technical, neoliberalism is what's going on. That the idea of neoliberalism is fundamentally that a free market will decide, and that all things should be privatized. That if you that public services and government services should be run as businesses are run. It's an obvious and abject and complete and total failure at this point, but that's not preventing the upper class from continuing on with it, because while it's a failure for the society and the world, it's a massive success for the wealthy. That the wealthy end up becoming richer than pharaohs, richer than any other person has ever been. Like literally shooting themselves into space rich. And we're all supposed to be like, wow, that's a good thing. Super cool that we created a society in which people can privatize everything. Yeah, I'm the Canadian commie, dude. I'm a believer in the far left. You bet I am. Juan23, love that name, bud. Good to see you. Yes, North Korea, a communist country, absolutely flawless, so good. The people definitely aren't suffering. I bet you don't know anything about North Korea, dude. I bet you don't know anything about North Korea. Like, for real. Like, Americans are the most, like, Westerners are the most overwhelmingly propagandized people in the world. Like, it's not close. Like, I almost guarantee that you don't know anything about North Korea. Saying things like that. Like, North Korea was absolutely destroyed by Westerners. Like, leveled to rubble. Like, completely, like for God's, watch the television show MASH. Right? Watch the fucking television show MASH. The Korean War. like literally leveled the country to dust. Like every building was rubble. And the fact that they managed to rebuild and create any kind of stability whatsoever in the space of time that they've done it is a miracle. It's a total fucking miracle. If the same thing had happened in capitalist America, those places would still be rubble, right? They're not going to rebuild like Detroit. Like if Detroit turned into rubble because they fucking abandoned it, and you think they're going to turn around and actually try to do anything? Where's the money in it, right? Where's the fucking money in it? Like it's as simple as this. Now, is what they're doing different than what we do? Yeah, obviously. Right? Does that mean that the people under it are suffering and there's all this pain and turmoil? Probably not. Like, probably not, dude. So, I just think that you probably don't know as much about the subject as you think you do. And Compton is saying being worried about how to abolish the state is an excuse to not do anything because you don't know if your actions contribute to the withering of a state. Yeah, I can think of plenty of excuses not to act before worrying about whether my actions lead to the dismantling of a state or not. You are right, Compton. It does seem to be like a side issue. Like what is it? Is it something that we should be focusing our energy on, right? Do you believe in execution then, since that's what communists do? Yeah, I think people like Hitler should have been executed, right? I think that it was right to execute Nazis. Yeah, I think that's correct. Like, I think that when you have psychopathic murderers who are killing hundreds of millions of people or rounding up people and putting them into concentration camps and then gassing them, right? Yeah, I think that that's fine. Do you want to treat your supreme leader like a god then? Yeah, I just think you're illiterate, dude. Like, I don't take that seriously. Stacy McTrow, good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're here to be beautiful. Capitalism is a death cult. We are destroying the planet. Life under capitalism drains people of life. I love you shutting down everything with logic. Thank you. Well, thank you, Stacy. I try to keep things rational and sane. I try. And I'll say it over and over again. If you want to confront me and you want to show me a document, something that comes out of like Princeton or Harvard, right? Something that's serious and has serious credible support behind it, I'll read it. I'll take a look at it. But I'm not gonna, like, the CIA is not a source, right? Like, the CIA is the largest terrorist organization that exists on the planet. It's not close. And most of what people think they know about the subject is essentially CIA propaganda. So the CIA is not a source. And that's just, it's like the high ground. I'm sure that you're well meant. Like, I'm sure you're a good person living out in the world, but like, what you're saying to me sounds like CIA propaganda. It really does. Like, it's just like, come on, man. Like, it's highly unlikely that the people of North Korea are walking around being like, "Oh, supreme leader is a god that we must worship." Like, it's highly unlikely that that's the case. Stacy, I feel like you're one of the last few reasonable people left. I love your live streams. Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate it. I mean, the goal of this, I keep thinking, why am I doing this? Like, what is this for? And really, I do think the goal of it is just to create a space for people to exist in, to maintain some kind of rational sanity. That the world has gone nuts. We are falling into a state of absurdism. I see it everywhere now. That we are falling into complete and total absurdism. Like, I see it with this Ronnie McNutt stuff, which is now, it's shown up again, right? I didn't think it was going to come back. But it's just a descent and a collapse into absurdism because nothing makes sense anymore. The systems and institutions that we're all supposed to pay fealty to no longer respond to us. That everything we do is a waste of our lives and a waste of our time. Right? And we're literally funneling all of this energy into systems that are designed to betray and then destroy us. And I just don't think people know how to respond to this anymore. Right? How do you emotionally grapple with the reality of living in a society that is actually betraying itself like this and is actually structured to be at war with itself like this? Right? And so I'm hoping to create a space in which people can come and share and at least exist with other people who see it that way and who understand that we're living that way. Because the systems of power will never respond to it. The institutions will never respond to it. And they will eat themselves in that process. Like we're going through a pretty incredible period, which is going to lead to some really insane shit. Some really insane shit is going to start happening, and stuff that we would really think would not happen in America. You're going to get a lot of people being like, "This wasn't supposed to happen in America." Well, it's gonna, and it's gonna, and it's and when it happens, it's going to happen in the American way, which is enormous and with lots of bravado. The high ground. China's the only successful communist country. Compare North Korea to South Korea. SK is thriving and as capitalist as it gets. NK is terrible, as communist as it gets, man. Again, I just don't think you know anything about the subject, dude. Like, I really do think that you're just like, I read some CIA propaganda and now I'm an expert. Like, really. I genuinely think that's where you're at. And, like, you can go talk to North Koreans. Like, you can go see their society. You can type into YouTube North Korean walk around video, right? Like I could do that right now. People will walk around North Korean cities, like, and I'll show you the like, oh, this is a North Korean, what a hellscape, right? Like I don't take your position very seriously because it's not very serious, right? I don't think you've done any serious work. I don't think you've done anything really serious to actually know anything about the subject. I genuinely think that you just have read some articles that the CIA wrote, and that's the basis of your opinion. It's as simple as that. I've seen a lot on communism, and this is from 123, and I completely agree it sounds good on paper, but it just eventually fails since everyone is treated equally. As bad as it may sound, a gas station worker should not be paid as much as a doctor. This is a classic sort of this is a classic sort of talking point that doesn't actually bear out, right? Right? They okay. Hold on. I'm sorry, the high ground. That's about as dumb as anything I've ever heard in my life, dude. Right? Like North Korea walk around. Like I'm sorry, bud. You don't stage this stuff, dude. Like really think about what you just said. Really think about what you just said. How do you stage this shit? You sit down and think about what you just said and really ask yourself, how do you stage this? Just really think about it, bud. Like, for real. But to your point one, right? Like, I don't think, first of all, there is no society, including communist society, that think this way. That, like, that a gas station worker should not be paid as much as a doctor. Like, it's straight up it's not how anybody's arguing. It's not what anybody's actually saying. Right? It's not what anybody's actually arguing in favor of, right? Like, what we're literally arguing for is that a gas station worker should have stability, right? That if you're working at a gas station, you have a home and stability in your life, and you're not worked to exhaustion. You're not scared that it's all going to be taken away at any moment. There isn't this class of citizen who benefit from your despair, right? Like, we're not saying that gas station workers should be paid as much as doctors, which never happened and nobody argued for. We're saying that the lowest rung of the society shouldn't be abject and desperate poverty. That's straight up what we're saying. Slightly lesser. Good to see you, bud. I mean, look at it, bud. I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you're not going to believe me, believe your eyes, right? And unless you go along with this high ground thing where this is all staged. Like, I can't think of a more childish thing that is easy to disregard. This is staged, eh? So they've hired, what is this? It must be 1,000 people we've seen by now, right? And the buildings are fake. Like, those are all fake, right? Staged videos, totally fake, right? People just milling about with phones, taking pictures, all fake, staged. Wow, I didn't realize North Korea was so powerful. That look how much wealth and prestige and power they have to put into a fake video that they staged. Like, sit down. Hey, Cotton, bud, I love you, bud. Pull back a little, okay, dude? Pull back a little, bud. I understand. Stacy, capitalism only works for people who can provide labor with their body. Yeah, no one thinks about social programs until they're sick with no labor value. Wouldn't it be amazing if the necessities of life and health were exempt from profiting ever? Yeah, absolutely. Like, absolutely. Like, that's the whole goal, isn't it? Right? That we're exchanging real material things for just fake money. The high ground's just raving, dude. Bro, they have the most third world country ever. Look at the screen. North Korea owns 0 cars. Look at the screen. 0 pro sports teams. Because, wow, dude, that's the metric? Yikes. Has 0 economy. Look at the screen. Has 0 happiness. Look at the screen. Stop worshiping your walk around videos. Yeah, who cares about evidence, right? Evidence. I love that this guy went from like straight up being like, I don't know about communism and all, to like straight up just like a raving like lunatic, basically. Like, grow up. Grow up. No one gives a shit about your dumb CIA propaganda brain, right? Like, sorry, dude. There's evidence. I can see things with my eyes. Like, this is all staged, though, right? Like, it's grow up time, bud. Like, for real. And if this is how you're interacting on like a YouTube thing, right? Is this how you interact in the world? Because if this is how you're interacting with the world, everyone thinks you're a joke. For real. Like, you say dumb shit all the time, and chances are good that nobody calls you out on it, because I bet you're a nice guy. Like, that's the thing. Like, I bet you're a nice guy, right? But you've proven to me right here your abject and total willingness to just throw down on the stupidest possible shit that a person can say. And chances are good that's what you're doing in your normal life. So, maybe you should slow down on that. Yeah, and I mean, and Ligandes also points out, like, yeah, North Korea is sanctioned as well, right? Like, and they're prospering under those sanctions, right? Like, these people don't, like, I'm not looking at a dystopia here, dude. Like, honestly. Yeah, Shu is really nailing it. Once I started viewing the world without my Western bias, it changed so much of what I thought I knew. Yeah, like, we have been trained, and we are consistently trained to fear the rest of the world, right? And I just can't do that. It's just not something I can take very seriously. And like, a real big story that's going on in Canada right now is this idea that there are Chinese quote unquote police stations. And what these literally are is just the Chinese embassies that exist throughout Canada, creating little satellites, so that they'll buy like a tiny piece of property, like a house in a Chinese neighborhood, so that, you know, 70, 80-year-old grandmothers don't need to travel all the way downtown. They can just come to this place to interact with the embassy, right? And this is being turned into a huge scandal story, right? Here in Canada. Legit question, would you want to have an argument on Discord? Bro, I don't think you know anything. Like, you've really displayed your lack of knowledge already, right? Like, so I debate over, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I just don't think it would be interesting. I think it would be a waste of my time. I think people would be bored, because I don't think you know anything. And you've really shown that in the chat. Like, really clearly. CR Strifey, nothing in life is free. Everyone is provided for without contributing to that society. Who's providing for them is benefiting from the labor of others. But just to be supported because you exist as a pipe dream. Yeah, CR Strifey, I see what you're saying there, bud. Like nobody is talking about contributing nothing, right? But like, we should acknowledge that things could be easier than this by a lot. Right? Like, it only takes 2% of the populace to provide all of the food, right? Like we're taking the energy of our generations and of our nation, and we're funneling them into these dead-end nonsense pursuits. And we could be doing so much better than this. Like, so much better, dude. So much better. And it's not about getting stuff for free. It's in fact, it's because the people who are getting stuff for free are the capitalists, because they're the ones that aren't doing any work. That we do all the work and they take our surplus value for themselves and hoard it into offshore accounts. Literally what we're asking for is our time back. The only thing that means anything, right? To see the world in gray and not black and white is a true power. I mean, it's I've studied a lot of humanity, right? Like, my background is actually in theater and in the arts, right? And once you understand the human element, it's very difficult to play this game where, like, North Korea and China and these places are these terrifying, scary dictatorships. Like, it's very difficult to take that seriously. 1, 2, 3, genuine question. Why don't you move to one of those countries? Once again, genuine question. The fact that you feel like you need to preface that shows you exactly what that question actually is, right? It's quasi-genocidal, right? What's baked into the question? Oh, that people who disagree with me or who think that communism is good should be rounded up and shipped away, right? It's quasi-genocidal, and you understand that, which is why you preface it so. You just don't blithely say it, right? And so it's not a serious thing to be said. But if I want to take it seriously, and I'll pretend like it's a genuine question, that why would I abandon my country in its hour of need? I'm not much of a loyal citizen, am I? That when I feel my country is at its worst and when I think it needs the most amount of energy in order to find itself, to find its feet and heal, what, I'm just going to pack up and leave? No, I'm not a very good person then. I'm not a very good citizen, am I? I'm not a very good neighbor. I'm not very loyal to the country. Right? Like, the reason why I fight the way I fight is because I want us to improve. And I think that we can improve. And that there is a path. And that there are places that we can learn from and grow from. Right? I don't have this hyper-individualist mindset that says, well, I must be the one who ascends the hierarchy and becomes good. I think that that's dumb. I think that's kind of boring, honestly. And very arrogant and self-centered. And so I don't, like, I do what I do so that, like, how do we improve the world? How do we improve our own culture? How do we improve our own society? Well, you don't do that by abandoning it. Yeah, and also everyone can afford to move, right? Who's been training you to fear the world? Are you serious? Are you serious? Who's been training you to fear the world? It's literally the stated agenda of the CIA. It's literally their stated agenda. What are you talking about, dude? Embarrass me then, not that I care. Prove that capitalism is supposed to be a death cult. Prove that capitalism is supposed to be a death cult? Okay. Here's just an article I have just on hand. Right? Like, capitalism is literally destroying the planet. Like, and it's not going to be clean. It's not going to be nice. Right? That the sea levels coming up will be the first sign for people who are still in denial. Right? But eventually, we already have towns that are burning down. That's already happening. So I really don't know what to tell you, bud. Like, I really don't know what to tell you. Like, someone like you who refuses to acknowledge the existence of evidence and who seems to just think that CIA propaganda is worth something, right? I don't know that it would be easy to convince you that climate change is real, that it's being put forth. Like, the United States military is the #1 contributor to climate change. American capitalism has been the largest contributor for sure. And that right now China is the #1 emitter because it needs to protect itself from a psychotic military hell-bent on destroying itself. Like, I don't know what you need, bud. And none of it's based on anything, right? Like, that's the best part. Like, none of it's based on any idea anymore. Like, it used to be the case that there was at least some kind of theory of mathematical or economic truth that was behind this concept of neoliberalism, but that's gone. Like, that's completely discredited and completely dead. And so if you continue believing in something that has no basis in reality and is structured to destroy not only your people but your civilization and then your species, what is that if not a death cult? Wow, you look like that one middle-aged veteran on Facebook. Keep that on TikTok, bud. Like, I understand why you feel the need to do that, but I don't need to watch you do it. Go grieve somewhere else, bud. Howdy, folks. Good to see you, Base. Crux of the issue is that individual freedom comes at the expense of a collective goal that supports everyone, and then oppositely, collectivism necessarily restricts individual freedom. That's the tension, isn't it, Strifey? Like, and I find that we're in a point here in the West where we're not being very adult about that conversation. That it is a tension, right? There's a tension between those two. But here in the West, we don't want to believe that there is such a thing as collective good, right? That we've been overwhelmed by like a hyper individualism, right? A hyper individualism that doesn't that is falsifiable, like on the face of it. It's obvious that it's completely fraudulent, but and it's the refusal to acknowledge that there is such a thing as a collective good. And so if you're just refusing to acknowledge that there is a collective good that should be fought for, then you can't really get into the conversation of like, okay, well, individual freedom plus collectivism, like, and that if you do something that is for the collective good, that actually supports individual freedom, right? And so there's this constant ebb and flow and push and pull that, you know, if you're a grown-up, you understand that, like, okay, well, we'll kind of sacrifice this sort of individual freedom for this. Like wearing a mask. That's a real easy one to point to in Western civilization, Western society right now. That like the wearing the mask issue came up and it broke people. Like literally take a piece of cloth and put it on your face and it broke people. That means you're not really grown up. Like that means that you're not really interested in even having the conversation that there is such a thing as a collective good, and that this small ask that you put a piece of cloth on your face is too much for some people, right? So it's we've got to get to a point where we can even understand that there is such a thing as a collective good. And then we can have a more serious and robust conversation about, well, okay, what policy is good for the collective, and does that actually infringe on the rights of the individual, and is that actually causing problems? Yeah, and then you have people like Compton here who's, I don't care about individual freedoms. If everyone having a home means an individual needs to be disciplined, cool. Yeah. You're saying that I only trust... No, CIA article is high ground. And typing in all caps doesn't convince me, bud. Like, it's just hot tip. That doesn't go the way you think it does. You're literally giving yourself to the government. Yeah, right? Like, this is what it is, Juan, right? The second you say that a single individual needs to be disciplined, then we've ceded all authority to the government, right? How do you have a reasonable conversation about these things? When the conversation is literally either complete and total freedom, like I'm in the West, shooty gun, or a totalitarian dictatorship, 1984. And those are the only two poles that you're allowed to have a discussion on. Like, it's impossible. I think individual freedom should be constrained by how damaging it is to society in which they live. I mean, yeah, like, should Jeff Bezos have the freedom to shoot rockets at space? Right? Like, should probably not. Like, probably not. Right? Like, should random individuals have the right to pollute the planet? Like, they have the individual freedom to pollute the planet, right? So it must be good. Well, obviously false. Like, obviously false. If you believe that the U.S. government is a lie, then do you believe in flat Earth? Like, come on, dude. Like, it's it's getting very cringy in this chat all of a sudden. I love how there's some anti-communists that have so much time that they tune into a communist stream just to heckle. Yeah, these streams used to be very chill without these griefers. Yeah, they're shook. That's just it. No, they're just kids. They don't know how to talk to adults. And honestly, like, the reason why I'm keeping High Ground and Juan around is because they're being very respectful. Like, I could tell the High Ground's kind of a goofy guy, but like, if you come in here and disagree with me and push at me and do all that kind of stuff, like, but you don't treat me like a piece of shit, right? You're not gonna just call names and all that kind of stuff. I'll keep you around, right? I'll keep you around. Yeah, the Ronnie McNutt people are children. They saw a Gore video for the first time. They're dealing with it the same childlike way we all did while being desensitized. Not even worth acknowledging. I mean, I think there's another thing going on with it, CR Strifey, which is I do think that this Ronnie McNutt moment, it's because Facebook didn't ban it. It's because Facebook kept it around, and spread it around, and it's just the absurdism that people, and I think you are hitting on it, that I think people are dealing with it. Like, there is like a kind of awakening that's happening, but it's being dealt with in a very childish sort of a way, and I think that that's all part of it. I used to be kind of disgusted by it, but now I see it for what it is. That people are trying to grapple with something that's horrible, right? And we all know, like, the Ronnie McNutt suicide really heightens and illustrates our understanding that we are not, that our institutions are not going to help us. That we have these institutions here in the West that exist and have been erected through the process of history passing and all of this, but we're all coming to terms with the reality that there is no institution in the West that is at all interested in ameliorating any of this. It's just not happening, and I think it is creating a culture of absurdism, because why do we even have these institutions? Why does any of this even exist? If it's not going to respond rationally to the needs of the populace, why do they exist? And yet they do, and they enforce their authority through a police state, which, as we move forward, is going to get more and more terrifying. And and I just don't think people know how to deal with it. I think that that's the truth. And so you're just seeing people who are in this state of total grief, who are grieving the death of the idea of their country and the idea and the potential of their country and the potential of their society, and they don't know how to, right? People don't know. There is no collective grief. There is no collective acknowledgement. Like, there is no moment where we're all coming together and having like a more robust understanding of what's going on in the world, and so we're and so people descend into absurdism. And I think that the Ronnie McNutt thing is a pretty strong illustration of that. And wherever you are, Ronnie, I hope you're doing well, bud. Methane. Good to see you, Methane. Problem with collective good is when the powers that be actively lie to you on what good is. Yeah, that's my issue. So you end up doing collective wrong instead of good. Well, and it's so difficult having this conversation right now, right? Because we know that our institutions are not responding to us and that they don't work in our interests. And so you start talking about like a state-run enterprise that actually operates for the benefit of the people. And I think there are just lots of people who don't think it's possible, right? They just don't think it's possible because all they've ever experienced is abandonment by the institutions that exist in their society, right? So when you start talking about, hey, we should do something for the collective good, they genuinely don't know what you're talking about. Like and I think that that's serious, and I think that that's real, something that we all have to accept is part of the conversation. Like, how do you convince somebody who has only viewed the state as an enemy and has only viewed government as an enemy that it is possible for the government to respond to the needs of the people? That there are examples of it. You can see it. Yeah, and Cotton, you've never experienced collectivism anyway. I think it's part of it. 1, 2, 3, what made you believe in communism? It's not really a belief, first of all. Like, that Marxism is trying to articulate what's going on through historical and material analysis. So it's not really a belief, right? It's just looking at the world and trying to call it for how it is. And so it's not. So this idea of a belief, I take ire with. I started to call myself a communist because people started to call me a communist, and that I was just making statements that I considered to be perfectly rational, like, why is there homelessness? Why are people in poverty? Why are there people that work full-time jobs and cannot get houses? Why do these things exist in our society? And it was simply through the process of asking these very easy questions, very obvious questions to ask, that people would call me a communist. And the solutions that I would come up with, which I consider to be very reasonable and rational and easy to implement solutions, got me painted as a communist. And so eventually I just sort of shrugged. It was Jordan Peterson was actually the final straw that broke the count, because I hadn't read any of that. I hadn't read any Communist Manifesto, none of that. I hadn't experienced any of it. I just literally was like, shouldn't there be no homelessness? Look, we're very rich. Why is there homelessness? Right? And the whole idea to me that, like, oh, they're homeless because they're not trying hard enough. Like, I immediately knew that was stupid. Like, I didn't fall for that for a second. Like, it's obviously false. Because there's systems, right? Like, and it's obvious that there are systems, right? And the people who are walking around pretending like there aren't, I think, are just dead brain. I just don't think that they exist in the world in a real way. I think that they are living in fairy fart land, where they're essentially just sitting in their dad's money, basically. But Jordan Peterson stood up and talked shit about Marxism, and I thought to myself, oh, if this guy thinks that Marxism is bad, then maybe I should take a look at it. And then I did. I read the Communist Manifesto. I read the works of Engels. I read Das Kapital, right? And saw that it was really just a continuation of the works of Adam Smith, who I had already read. And I just went, oh, okay. Everyone else is calling me a communist, and this guy is making all the sense in the world, so I'm just going to start calling myself a communist. And I had always wanted to do, when I started this YouTube channel, I didn't start as the Canadian Commie. I started as just my actually the name I used was Toy Store John, because I worked in a toy store at the time. And it was only later that I changed it to the Canadian Commie. And I did that, initially I just did it for branding purposes, honestly. Just to carve out a niche and to have a place in the market and to distinguish myself from other people, to make a bold position. But as time has gone on and as I've read more, I come to see that, look, if you can't handle reading Marx, then you're the one that's the ideologue. You're the one that's believing things, right? And that's fundamentally the truth of what we're experiencing here in the West, is that we have a belief system, we have a series of myths that we have erected around ourselves. We worship money, like the tool that exists to facilitate trade in the things that actually matter, which are assets. We instead of acknowledging that it's just a tool that is manipulatable and that we can do whatever we want with, instead of that, we worship it. And so it's the capitalists that have the belief system. The Marxists are just trying to figure things out, right? We're just trying to say, well, what's the material reality and what's the historical reality of the events that have occurred? That's why communists are always right, honestly, because we're actually the ones looking at the reality of the situation. Honestly, I suggest John just bans these people. Don't give them a platform at all. That's what they want. Just ban them on the spot. Continue the stream. The reason why I disagree with that base is because I think that people can change their tune. Right? I've seen it. There have been people who have come in here and they've had that exact experience where they started as libertarians and then a year out, they're at least Democrats or at least left-leaning, right? He probably makes minimum wage, so he's mad at how the rich people are. That's just childish, dude. You know, the high ground, bud. Like, that's a really embarrassing thing to say, right? Like all you're doing is revealing that you disrespect people on minimum wage. That's all you're doing. You're just revealing your class bias. You're just saying that you don't respect people who make a certain income. right? You're dehumanizing me with that statement. Like, you need to understand that you're choosing your worship of money over your respect of my humanity, and that's what you're doing. Compton, you've only experienced the command of the bourgeoisie. No wonder everyone's warped opinion on freedom. Yeah. This shouldn't be a stream about debating anti-communists who obviously just want to annoy. I don't know about that base, though. I think there is a difference between people who obviously want to annoy and people who are actually reaching out and trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm not disrespecting your position, but I don't want to turn this into a bubble, right? And part of what I'm doing is to reach out to these types of people and to try to convince people, right? And I don't think I can do that if I don't include them in the conversation. But if they're disrespectful to me, if they're mean to me, right, for no reason, then I am going to do that. And I will be honest with you, High Ground, like, you're right on that line, dude. Like, have some basic respect for my base humanity, please. Kapal K, if you answer, it would be greatly appreciated. I would, bud, but sorry, bud, I don't see your question. Sorry, man. Did I miss it? Yeah, bud, I just don't see your question. If you could just restate your question, I'll answer whatever you need. Every job should support a dignified living. Yet minimum wage should afford someone to support themselves. Yet triviality. How dare you, Compton? How dare you make me say that word? Trivially so. God damn it, Compton. Shu says, so I agree a stateless society probably won't happen. What would your best case scenario state look like to you? I mean, I think you're always going to need to have some kind of centralized system to at least ensure that there is a smoothing out, right? Like you at least need a place people can come to and air their grievances, right? Like, you need that. And if you don't have that, then basically you're just allowing chaos to exist. And I do think that the tension is between, like, is the state facilitating the freedom of the people to create their own imagination and create their own society, or is the state enforcing its own vision? And here in the West, the state enforces its own vision, right? And literally economically. Like, during the 2008 financial collapse, like, those banks should have gone under. Like, that's what should have happened. They should have all gone bankrupt. They should have been nationalized. And the people should have taken control of them, right? That's what should have happened. But instead, they were bailed out. And so that's the state enforcing a society on this, a failed society, no less, on the citizens. And, yeah, Milo, that's really gross, dude. Facebook did ban it, John. They just couldn't stop it midstream because there's no algorithm to detect someone who's about to kill themselves with a shotgun. My understanding was that it didn't get banned, CR Strifey. So that news to me. Not that I've sought any of this out, honestly. The Ronnie McNutt stuff has just landed on my doorstep. So I think the funniest thing that happens is when people say I look like him, because I don't. Like, I have a beard and glasses as well, and that's kind of it. Prodigal says, I'm a social democrat, and I like to hear other people's opinions on topics because it sounds nice and it's enjoyable, yeah? High Ground, dude, it's literally just not going to happen. Like, I'm just not interested. Like, I'll make it as easy as possible, dude. Like, you're the capitalist. You want to have a debate with me? Pay me. Pay me for my time. You're the capitalist. If you can answer, that will be greatly appreciated. Weighs on me since my family's from Ukraine. So, sorry, dude, I missed your question, bud. So it's about Ukraine. I don't really know what your question is, dude. Abolish colonialism, imperialism, see your Nordic model collapse all around you. Most of you support colonial social welfare systems because they're white. I mean, yeah, there's that. Yeah, and High Ground, I gotta tell you, man, statements like this, Juan is the only person with a brain in this chat, doesn't make me take you seriously. Okay, we can just do away with you, dude. Bye. Like, it's you don't know how to be basically respectful. And if you're not going to be basically respectful, then I don't need to keep you around. What do we got? Yeah, I mean, the Nordic models basically exist because of communism, not in spite of it, right? That the reason why the Nordic models exist is because capital capitulated to the working class who was threatening revolution, and that there was a communist revolution happening on the other side of their border in Russia. So it was a genuine threat. And so the capitalists were drawn to a position where, okay, be overthrown or actually capitulate. Do something, right? Respond to the grievances of the working class. And it's, you could just and so that's how this model comes around. And that's why it's steadily being dismantled. Because the threat of communism is no longer there. Look at the Chinese treatment of Uyghurs. We got a CIA propagandist in here. So Soviet treatment of Ukrainians again. Like, I don't. This Chinese treatment of the Uyghurs, right? Like every time I've taken a look at this, you know what I find out? I find a guy named Adrian Zenz, who's a CIA asset, who literally says his goal in life is to destroy China on behalf of God, right? And like the Uyghur genocide narrative, the more you think about it, the stupider it gets. Like, we literally have satellite technology that can read street signs. You can literally see people walking down the street with the satellite technology we have. And we can't seem to find this thing. That doesn't seem to exist. We can take really good pictures of the tops of buildings and put really spooky music over it. Boo, but... God news does not work. I mean, literally look at China. As a person whose parents were born into communism and born right before capitalist revolution, I like to hear other people's opinions. The so-called Uyghur genocide is fake as fuck. Adrian Zenz, yeah. Yeah, source, trust me, bro. Fabio, hey, I love your YouTube lives. Can you say... Alright, we can continue doing this all day long. What's my opinion on the Soviet suppression and the indirect genocide of the Ukrainians in the late 1930s? You're talking about the Holodomor. So the Soviet archives were opened up recently by Putin. Anti-communists and anti-Soviets have gone in through the archives, and every single intellectual and every single academic, including like capitalist, anti-communist academics who have gone into those archives, have walked out saying that it wasn't a genocide, that there was a famine, it wasn't intended. The Soviets did everything they could to deal with the famine that was happening. It's not a genocide. Like, it's literally Nazi propaganda. It's not even CIA propaganda. It's just like literally Nazi propaganda. And the reason why you have modern day countries like Germany acknowledging that it was a genocide in this moment is obviously for political reasons. Like, obviously. Because when you actually take a look at Princeton and Harvard and Oxford and, you know, the places who actually do these sorts of things, and the academics who stake their entire careers on this kind of stuff, well, they're not walking out of there being like, yeah, man, Stalin was talking about fucking getting those Ukrainians, and they were really orchestrating a genocide. That's quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. A libertarian, I always will be, but I enjoy seeing how other people see things, yeah, so on and so forth. News sources, etc., etc. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, when these guys come in, saying this kind of stuff, all you're doing is revealing to us that you don't know anything about the subject, right? Like, that's all. Right? If scholars discuss the cause of the Holodomor, if it can be classified by genocide, but it's nearly unanimous that it was man-made. It's not unanimous. Certainly not unanimous. I respect you putting your voice out here. Like, it's straight up not unanimous, dude. Like, like the United States doesn't acknowledge the Holodomor, right? Like, famines happen. They occur. You could create an argument, but it's so much more complex than, like, and the thing that I always say when we get talking about genocide is that there's no such thing as a secret genocide. There's no such thing as a genocide that happens in secret. That the ruling class cannot orchestrate a genocide without discussing it. And this is just as true with the Uyghur genocide as it is with the Uyghur genocide narrative as it is with the Holodomor, right? Like, when Hitler rose to power to orchestrate the genocide against the Jews, he did so holding a book in which he wrote about it and said that he wanted to do so openly. When the Canadian government implemented a policy of cleansing on the First Nations people, it was passed through Parliament with majority support. That it was discussed openly for anyone to see. And when it comes to these issues, right? When it comes to these issues, it just doesn't happen, right? The National People's Congress does not discuss implementing a Uyghur genocide or a policy of genocide against the Uyghur people. That the Soviets did not discuss implementing a genocide against the Ukrainian people. And there's just no such thing as a genocide that happens in secret. Like, it literally cannot happen that way. Because you need to plan it. It's a major project that you're embarking on. You don't get to just do it, right? You talk about it. I have family who could first account. No, and of course the famine occurred, right? Like, of course the famine occurred, right? Canada recognizes the Holodomor as a genocide. Yeah, Trudeau, years later, so Trudeau Sr., acknowledges the Holodomor as a genocide in order to sway the Ukrainian vote. That Canada has a huge Ukrainian population, and to get those Ukrainians to vote for him instead of his conservative opponent, he acknowledged the Holodomor as a genocide for political reasons and political gain. That's absolutely the truth. No, you're being very respectful right now, K-Paul. Like, you are, and it's... No, and I understand that, especially if you've got family that died during an event like that, but, like, we here in the West have every reason to lie about that, right? The Nazis have every reason to lie about that and who caused it, right? We have every reason to mess around with that. So, to just sort of openly and blithely believe what we're being told by Westerners about their major political opponent, which is the Communist Soviet Union. I just don't think it's a wise thing to do. Oh, Poland. Poor Poland. Yeah, dude, what was going on in Poland had less to do with, had way less to do with communism or any other system and just more to do with war. Straight up. Like, Poland was in the fucking middle of a fucking war, dude. Like, Poland got ripped apart. Absolutely devastated and destroyed. Like, there's no ism. It wouldn't matter if they were capitalist or neoliberal or communist or socialist. It wouldn't have mattered, right? That the forces of the universe ripped that place apart, and it was just never gonna. So to stand up and point at one thing or the other, like, it was war, bud. It was just fucking war. Yeah, I mean. If you want to take the liberal position, right now I'm showing Time Magazine's Person of the Year is Vladimir Zelensky and the spirit of Ukraine, and they're obviously doing everything they can to really lift up Zelensky as a positive force in the world. The guy who banned all left opposition in the parliament, but keeps the Nazis in place. Yeah, he's definitely Man of the Year. I mean, Hitler was Man of the Year once, right? And so was Stalin, for that matter, if I want to be nice. Yep, and Canada brought over and facilitated a ton of ultra-nationalist far-right Ukrainians. That's absolutely the truth. What is it, the Operation Paperclip, where they literally just brought over tons of Nazis over here, right, to protect them? What do I think about the incident in the 1989 Tiananmen Square with the famous Tank Man? Could be considered proof towards the negative impact of communism. I don't think you actually know what happened. That's what I think. Right? That what's called the Tiananmen Square massacre what we're told is that the state pointlessly cracked down on protesters. What I see is a color revolution funded by the CIA. That your quote unquote tank man, he wasn't run over by that tank. The tank just sat there and waited for him, and then his friends eventually came and swept him away, right? And the tanks moved on. And yeah, of course, the Chinese military is going to respond to a legitimate coup attempt by the CIA during a color revolution. So, I don't. Again, I don't really take this critique very seriously. And the big reason why I don't really take it very seriously is because people who usually talk about it don't really know anything about the subject. They don't really know what happened, right? Because again, like we're reading articles from like the New York Times handwritten by a CIA asset instead of like listening to some academic who's actually staking his entire career on knowing anything about the subject. Okay, Paul, I'm 62% Ukrainian and I do not affiliate with Banderites or the Azov movement. I only applaud Azov for the defense of my homeland, not their political views. Yeah, their views are atrocious. Well, at least you're acknowledging that part of it. I mean, they're Nazis. Like, there's no other way to describe it. And the true villains of that piece, outside of Azov themselves, is NATO for funding and training them. Right? Like, we trained them. We were training them. We were funneling arms into Azov for all of that. Right? And you can pretend like the Donbass war didn't happen, but, I mean, there's a big reason why Putin needs to get involved in Ukraine. And it's because he literally has Nazis shelling ethnic Russians on his border for 8 years. Like, you can pretend like the 2014 coup didn't happen. You can pretend like the Donbass war didn't happen, but we know, right? We know. And if you actually want peace to reign in Ukraine, the first thing that someone like Zelensky should do is acknowledge that Ukrainian Nazis affiliated with NATO had a lot to do with what's going on there. And the West's strategy in how to discuss Ukraine is just to omit all of that. Right, just omit all of it. The Donbass war didn't happen. There was no coup in 2014. The Euromaidan didn't happen. Right? The story is Putin invaded. That's the story, and it was illegal, and we're not supposed to discuss it. So it's you know, the second you introduce the reality that there are literally Nazis killing people on the Ukrainian border, on the Ukrainian-Russian border, changes the narrative a little bit. I don't like Ukraine. Read about the Wolin massacres, most brutal genocide. Yeah, I'm not going to read any of that. Prodigal. Most Eastern European countries are just bad geological spots. I mean, there is a bit of that, isn't there? A Prodigal. I mean, it's and World War II was just like I've had people come in here, like people from Romania, and start talking about this kind of stuff, and it's like, you know, guys, like countries like Romania and Poland and all this, like you can believe what you like and still just get completely blown away. Like this is what I'm talking about when I talk about the human aspect of this conversation, that what we're having. And we are getting kind of caught up in the historical kind of stuff about what communism was once. But really, there is like a hard truth that I think people don't like to accept, which is you can believe what you like, but if the universe wants to blow you up, it will. And it will have nothing to do with your ism. It'll have nothing to do with your ideological backing or your belief system or how you view the world, right? And there are just countries in especially in the Eastern Bloc who just get swept up in World War II, right? And there's just no... Like, it wouldn't matter what they thought or what they believed. And it's... I'm pretty sure he's referring to... Yeah. And honestly, I feel like what we need to be doing now, like, we're getting, like, Hungary in 1956, this kind of stuff over and over and over again. Like, you understand that the world is happening now, right? Like, you understand that the world exists now. And that communism has evolved and has changed and exists in the world today, right? And that getting caught up in like one event that occurred in a backwater country in Eastern Europe somewhere, population a million. Like I genuinely don't give a shit what happened in Estonia in like 1952. Like genuinely, I don't care. And more, like I see this Discord just getting bogged down. Well, what about this thing that happened? What is it? Honestly, can I be really straight with a lot of you guys? If you take all of the worst things that you believe about communism, all of the worst things that you believe about communism, and you put them in a pile, and I just say, yep, that all happened, right? And we don't even have a debate about it or a conversation, and I just accept that all of that happened, right? Because it's a compare and contrast, right? Then we take a look at the things that we all agree capitalism has done. That's World War I, World War II, the Civil War, the slave trade, the genocide of the First Nations people in South America and North America. Not to mention the mounting atrocities like the invasion of Iraq, all that kind of stuff. This is all stuff we agree existed. The nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? These sorts of things. And we compare those two things side by side. Communism still wins. And it's not close. Right? So that's why getting bogged into this kind of conversation, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about that? Well, it's a compare and contrast. Right? It's a compare and contrast. And the truth, like, where's Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island in communist countries? Where does that exist? Where is this island where Bill Gates, the richest people in the society and the most powerful, literally former presidents, went to this island? Like, where does this exist in communist countries? Right? Like, you guys want to get your ass hung up on, like, a difficult situation that a political leader had to make a tough decision, and you want to demonize that person and pretend as though that's an admonishment of the entire structure, while completely fucking ignoring that your own capitalist society is a hellhole run by literal demons. Like literal unrepentant, like pedophiles and psychopaths. Like complete and total fucking psychopathic maniacs are running today's capitalist society. And you guys are getting your ass hung up because, like, there was a guy who tried to do something and it didn't go so well and it's tough. Like, sorry, man. I'm finding it really difficult to to keep any of this serious. I'm sorry that in 1952 some communist leader didn't check a box and it made your family go hungry for a second, you think. Like, tough. Like, no one should use Yugoslavia as a failure of communism. It was due mainly ethnic tensions. I would say that the invasion by NATO probably had more to do with it. Honestly. No, you're just telling me what people did to the East. Like that's just it. Like you capitalist apologists do this all the time. Where you take an event that occurred in like a population million place, right? You decontextualize it, distill it of what actually happened, right? And then you universalize it and say that this is what communism does 100% of the time, while completely removing from the conversation, utterly, the reality that it's a compare and contrast. And when you actually look at what capitalism is and what capitalism's doing in the world, you can see pretty quickly that it's not a hard choice. It's not difficult. That I would rather live in a society that was attempting to solve its problems and failing than live in one that was not attempting to solve its problems and succeeding. Like, this is an annoying one. Here's one that I found that I actually really wanted to talk about. Elephant in the room, no leaders seem to want to say capitalism didn't work. Shipping tons of junk people don't need around the globe so it can become a waste didn't work. Setting us all against each other as competitors didn't work. Privatizing basic necessities didn't work. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I think that this speaks widely to the reality that we as people view the world differently, like as workers view the world differently than the upper class, that the ownership class, that the system is working for the owners, right? That it's not working for us, obviously, right? It's not working for us, but it's not, but it is working for the people who own the society, right? For the pedophiles and the child rapists, for the people who want to have an island with Jeffrey Epstein on it so that they can send Donald Trump and Bill Clinton and all these guys, right? Like, it's working just fine. It's working just fine. And that's fundamentally the problem. Because I think people really do think, like I see it all the time. Like, people are trying to organize and figure out what to do and how to act and where to go. And they're like, we need to pressure our media to report on this. It's like, they're not going to. And if they do, it's not going to be the way that you want. Because the same people that own the power structure own the media, right? Like, and pretending is like that's not the case is not going to help you, right? Yeah, I think the paying for everything in USA is disgusting, to be honest. Like, how much for college? Yeah. And it's as backward an idea as you can possibly think. Like, having people pay for college is a good way to have a stupid populace. And if you have a stupid populace, then you're going to fall behind countries that understand that you need to have an educated populace. You need, if you want to move forward in a reasonable way. But I'm more or less of the opinion that having a stupid populace is more or less the point, right? But that the capitalists are fine with everybody being stupid. That being stupid is part of the game now, because if you have a stupid populace that is happy it's stupid, right? Like I can tell you from personal experience. The people who come in here with the most bravado and the most confidence are the stupidest people. That there's something about stupidity that gives you a confidence that you wouldn't otherwise have. And that this confidence is it's completely unearned, it's completely misdirected, and it's easy to manipulate people. It's easy to keep them stuck in really dumb ideologies, like, frankly, libertarianism. Like, I know that there's been a couple of people in here saying that they're libertarians. Well, I think it's a very dumb way of looking at the world. That the best way to assert our personal freedom is to sell ourselves to capitalists. Like, it fails on the face of it, like at the bottom of it, and the strange idea that we just need to do capitalism harder and then that'll work it out, right? Yeah, you have a good one, Kapal. I hope you're doing well out there, bud. Okay, I'm going to pause the stream for just a second. I'm going to put this walkabout, this staged video of North Korea walking about. I just need to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. You stay put, buddy. Be right back. Be right back. Oof. right. I bet you I've lost all my viewership now. Ugh. Oh, I still have 5 people on TikTok. Well, how about that? How you guys doing? Hope you're doing well. Oh. This opening up to TikTok is quite an experience, eh? You got a lot of people who come drifting in here. So, moving to some actual politics, because I do have articles and things that I like to read. We've got from Angus Reid, Premier approval December. Literally, Doug Ford sitting at 36% approval, or 34% approval. That should tell you pretty clearly that 34% of the society is just completely fucking out to lunch, right? Like, we're literally privatizing our, oh, sorry, buddy. We're privatizing our healthcare system, right? And, come on. And while we're privatizing our healthcare system, we're destroying what's called the green belt. It's absolutely devastating what we're doing. Okay, I'm just gonna not let you use that. It's absolutely devastating what we're doing, and we're all just supposed to pretend as though. Here, hold on. You guys want to say hello? I know. Hello. Say hello to my little pug. Hello, my little pug. Hello. Yeah, Prodigal just quoting Carlin in the chat. The fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick being jammed in their ass every day because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. Yeah. And I mean, now it's just getting obvious, right? I'm a bit lucky, Prodigal, in this where I love pugs. It's sad how they breed them. The modern, first of all of the puppy mill laws got put into place, so it's illegal to puppy mill pugs. Even like hard right fascist types were like, no, we can't continue doing that. So if you end up with a pug in your life, it's actually been bred, and modern breeders are trying to get those flaws out of them, right? And those flaws happened because of the puppy milling, because of capitalism. And people were just like, get as many pugs out as you can, as many pugs as you possibly can. If you go and you look at older pictures of pugs, they actually have a much longer snout, much longer legs, right? They used to be bred in Chinese monasteries, and they're one of the oldest breeds we know about. And so modern breeders are doing everything they can to get them out. Oh, hey Raven, how are you doing? Good to see you. His name is Milo. And I need to pause for a second, man. Like, I feel like this chat just got kind of bombarded by a bunch of nonsense. Like, just a bunch of fucking nonsense. Like, just a lot of dick swaggering in the chat, man. A lot of fucking dick swaggering in the chat. And it's like, the signs of the decline of our society are all around us, right? Like, here's a headline for an article from CTV News. There have never been so many renters in Canada, RBC report says. That census data they analyzed shows almost 5 million households rented the home they lived in last year, up from 4.1 million a decade earlier. And it's getting more dramatic and more obvious. And the transfer of wealth and the transfer of these assets is built into the structure of the system. That if you that what we are doing as renters is taking our earnings and giving it to another person for them to turn around and buy another property with. And that's exactly what they're doing. And so the whole system is being tilted towards this idea that all homes eventually become owned by smaller and smaller groups, right? Groups like Vanguard, groups like, I forget the name of the other one. But like literally, these organizations own most of the shares and stocks that exist in the society, right? That these are hedge funds that own and operate all of the financial side of the society. And these guys are going to eventually own all of these properties. We're going to turn into a culture of renters, right? And it's so obvious that even CTV News is reporting it. And in the meantime, majority of Canadians fearful about feeding their families as economic anxiety grows, right? This is a poll coming out of Global News. Canadians are growing more concerned about the state of the economy and the impacts on their pocketbooks, a new poll suggests, with a majority now saying they are worried they won't have enough money to feed their families. The Ipsos poll, conducted exclusively for Global News, found 53% of those surveyed were fearful about having enough food on the table, up 9 points from just a month ago. It's quite a startling statistic, said Sean Simpson, a senior vice president of Ipsos Public Affairs. But the poll also found economic concerns have grown across the board since October, particularly when it comes to the holidays. Just under half of respondents say they are worried about getting over their heads with holiday spending, making a 15-point jump, while 52% feared they won't have enough for holiday gifts, up 7 points. Concern over a potential recession hitting Canada within the next year has gone up 3 points, with 86% of Canadians surveyed now saying they're either somewhat or very worried. We're seeing quite remarkable and significant changes in such a short period of time, Simpson said. Canadians clearly have heightened anxieties over the potential for a recession, over interest rates, over high inflation, and as a result, we're seeing dramatic changes. The poll was released hours before the Bank of Canada was expected to conclude a historic year marked by high inflation and aggressive monetary policy tightening, with one more interest rate hike on Wednesday. In the wake of rapidly rising inflation this year, the Bank of Canada has raised its key interest rate 6 consecutive times since March, racing to clamp down on inflation expectations before they became unmoored. The rate net now stands at 3.75%, and even a smaller hike would bring the interest rate to the highest it's been since 2008. The poll suggests 71% of Canadians feel the rising interest rates are outpacing their ability to adjust their own finances, up 4 points from October. You know what I think is interesting? This is a sidebar to this. Like, at one point, I had a viewership of about 300 people on TikTok. And I think I said the word Putin, and it dropped, and now I've got 6. Right? I gotta be more careful with that. Like, the algorithm definitely picks you off. Like, if you say the word Putin or Ukraine, you're donezo as far as this algorithm is concerned. Like, it's wild to me. Like, I've got almost 5,000 likes, and it's just like the stream just went boom. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. And we think we live in a world of free speech. That's the funniest part about these libertarian types that come in. Well, I don't go with communism because I believe in free speech, and free speech is what's the speechiest spiritual freedom. I'm literally like, bro, this app is engaging in a form of like McCarthy level censorship on an enormous scale. And it is only a matter of time before people are just completely chased off of these platforms for saying things like, hey, people should have food and shelter. Like, people should have access to food and shelter. And the majority of Canadians are fearful about it. And I read an article like this and I think to myself, when the capitalists see this, do they celebrate? Right? Remember when Kevin O'Leary said that it was great that there were 6 billion people living in poverty? Remember when he said that was a wonderful thing? Yeah, he'd probably say that about this, because that's how he thinks. That's how these capitalists are. That's what they do. Right? They're not interested in ameliorating the suffering. They're interested in spreading it because it makes them money. Because if you're desperate and you're a desperate worker, then you're going to take a job for less. And in the meantime, Gen Zers are taking on more debt, roommates, and jobs as their economy gets worse and worse. Anthony Strain was desperate for another roommate. The 26-year-old from Pittsburgh is currently unemployed, $50,000 in debt, and falling behind on his gas and electricity payments. To provide financial breathing room and help shoulder their $800 monthly rent, Strain said he and his partner found another person to move in with them and help split the bills. We wanted this system to minimize the average cost per person of living here, he said, adding that the trio splits the cost of rent, utilities, and subscriptions to streaming platforms. Strain isn't the only young American experiencing financial challenges right now. Amounts of credit card debt and delinquency rates are on the rise, especially among 18 to 29-year-olds. It comes as most economists predict a recession in 2023, as inflation is up 7.7% versus this time in 2021, and as rents, while beginning to fall in some cities, remain elevated. It's caused young Americans to take out more debt, bring on more roommates, and pick up more work. To be sure, not all Gen Zers are struggling. Americans aged 16 to 24 have seen a wage growth of 13% over the last year, well above the 7.7% inflation of over the same period, as companies have raised pay to attract workers. But if a recession comes, Gen Zers could be among the hardest hit due to mounting debt, few savings, and vulnerability to layoffs. The ones insiders spoke with don't have a lot of hope for the near future. We try to endure, but I don't know if we will last the winter unscathed, Strain said. Strain said that where over 2-year student loan payment pause has helped, but that he's continued to struggle with private loans and credit card debt. It's gotten to a point where my payments covered the interest and not much else, he said. Both of my credit cards are maxed, with one actually surpassing the credit limit thanks to interest. U.S. credit card debt overall rose $38 billion between July and September of this year, per the New York Fed. The 15% year-over-year increase was the largest in over 2 decades. While overall delinquencies remain below pre-pandemic levels, all age groups saw upticks in missed payments over the past quarter. For older Gen Zers, the delinquency rate rose over to 6%, though still below the roughly 9% pre-pandemic rate. This is simply a reversion to earlier levels, with forbearances ending and stimulus savings drying up, or is this a sign of trouble ahead? New York Fed researchers wrote of the overall rise in missed payments. One 24-year-old Californian, who asked to remain anonymous, told Insider she's had to deplete her savings to financially support herself while pursuing a master's in finance program in Paris. She said she works as an intern, but makes roughly $1,250 per month. She's taken on babysitting jobs to bring in extra income, but even so, she said her bank account goes to zero or below every month. She hopes that taking on student loans for her master's will ultimately pay off financially, but she's not overly optimistic. Honestly, I don't think that any amount of education can save me or others from what's happening, she said. My generation and I will not have the same opportunities to build our future as our parents and grandparents did. Among 2019 and 2020 graduates, the average borrower had a student loan debt total of over $28,000. While the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness plan could reduce balances for some borrowers by up to $20,000, the plan is currently on pause after opponents have challenged it in court. As a finance student, she knows she's supposed to start saving for retirement as soon as possible, but said this is challenging with expenses and student loan payments weighing her down. I don't know when I will even have the ability to begin saving for retirement if I can barely feed myself now. Lawrence Kotlikoff, an economist at Boston University, previously told Insider that due to savings challenges and rising costs, over half of Gen Z could enter retirement without sufficient savings. Another Gen Zer who asked to remain anonymous told Insider they were making over $15,000 a few years ago through education and freelance programming gigs. The 23-year-old said they've since been laid off from the position that provided the bulk of their income. However, and have seen their financial situation slowly crumble as a result of the past few decades. They're now over $20,000 in debt, and between all their expenses, they said they're lucky to have $5 in their checking account at the end of this month. At this point, I can barely scrape together enough to stay afloat, they said. Per the New York Fed's report, the average credit card balance of 18 to 29-year-olds rose to roughly $2,000 in the third quarter, up from roughly $1,500 the year prior, and rising prices are among the reason why. Inflation cooled slightly in October, but remains well above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. I am someone who got lucky, who got a great job and followed sound financial advice, and was doing well, the Gen Zer said, and I still got stung. While unemployment rates remain low relative to historic levels, employers laid off nearly 1.4 million Americans in October, and the 26-year-old strain is currently among the unemployed. He works in the film and television industry, which he said is a slow season until spring. He's applied for unemployment benefits in the past, but said the last time he did so he didn't receive his first check for 6 months, which has discouraged him from trying again. He's explored working for Amazon, but said the company is cutting back hiring, and that he's found it hard to find another job. His partner is employed, which has helped them meet expenses in the short term. The pressure is on, he said. I'm hopeful that I can secure work soon and stay buoyant. It'll be tough, but I have no other choice than to stay determined. A lot of peers my age are in the same boat. And it really is worth pointing out that this is all by design. This is all on purpose. That's the thing that I think people are refusing to actually understand and acknowledge, that it's not happening because of some passing of a natural force. When you've got the Federal Reserve, the United States Federal Reserve, standing up, as well as the Bank of Canada, standing up and saying that their goal is to increase the amount of unemployed people in the market in order to help drive prices down. This is what it looks like. This is exactly what it looks like. And this is this capitalist system that we're supposed to venerate, right? We're supposed to all be in love with this system that's absolutely abandoning us at every single turn. I just can't take this shit seriously. Like, for God's sakes, medically assisted deaths to prove a growing boon to organ donation in Ontario. Here's a headline that I'm supposed to actually look at and be like, oh boy, what good news. The medically assisted deaths are prove a growing boon to organ donation in Ontario. There's a headline that's written by somebody who wants to feel good about the fact that we're just killing off the disabled, right? Like, just unbelievable. Canadian families will pay $1,065 more dollars for groceries in 2023. And the solution that the capitalists are giving us, and they're open about it. Like, they're open about it. You can literally see Trudeau and Freeland talking about it. Their solution is to create a recession, is to purposefully destroy the economy, to extract as much wealth out of the populace as possible in order to transfer that wealth into the hands of the billionaire class, the ownership class, and that will somehow balance the economy. So they're collapsing the whole thing on purpose. And you just wait. It won't be too much longer until it's just, this is the Great Reset. That, don't revolt, don't riot. Sure, your kids can't eat, but this is all part of the plan. We're going through the Great Reset, right? And then everything will be fine again. You know how I'm feeling right now, honestly? Because we just had like a big inundation of a lot of dumb people. Like, I don't need to be nice. Like, dumb people. It is just the confidence, but the absolute confidence these people have in a system that is obviously failing. Like, obviously failing. Do we need to create an argument that it's failing? Like, do we actually need to sit down and say that the system's failing to these people? Seems like. That's discouraging. Like, it's discouraging that we really are living in a culture where we actually do have to go 1 + 1 = 2. Like, we really are there. That there is no, like, measure by which we are succeeding. There is no measure. Unless your measurement is how many bombs you can build and drop. Unless that's your measure. But there's no measure. Like, we're increasing carbon emissions. Scientists thought, this is from the Washington Post. Scientists thought carbon emissions had peaked. They've never been higher. These 3 charts show why emissions are expected to hit another record high in 2022. Right? Oh, you know what's crazy about this chart, right? So if you're on TikTok, you're not seeing the chart, but basically, you've got a line that's essentially all the way up. It's just going straight up since we started measuring it, and we've had a series of dips, right? And then they're pointing them out. When did the dips happen? Well, in the 1970s, we had a carbon emission dip because of the first oil crisis. Then we had a second oil crisis in the 80s, where it dipped again. The global financial crisis, right, 2008, created a carbon dip. And the COVID-19 pandemic caused the largest dip of all, right? Well, and what do all those things have in common with one another? Well, they were events that slowed the capitalist machine down and slowed the pollution machine down. And I've said it over and over again on this platform, and I'll continue saying it. Like, we just need to stop. We just need to stop this madness. Like, we don't need to design anything or build anything or create anything or do anything. Like, we don't need to be salesmen. We don't need to design a product to sell to one another, like electric cars or carbon capture or any of this shit. That we have the evidence that's in front of us that the best way to stop polluting is to stop polluting. It's not to continue in this manic and ridiculous way that we're operating in. And when I start talking this way, people will tell me like, "Oh, well, that's pie in the sky, John. You're not being serious," or any of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not being serious. Walk to Dundas Square here in Toronto. Go take a look at Times Square in New York. Billboards just lit up, right? And I have the same critique about the Chinese lighting up their cities as well. It's just waste. It's just spending energy for the sake of spending energy. Just we're letting Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk shoot rockets at space, which each time they do that, it's producing more pollution than the entire populace does in their entire lifetime. It's just fucking crazy what we're doing. It's just crazy what we're doing. And the entire time, what we're watching this manic, crazed society destroy itself. We got idiots coming in here talking about shit that happened in 1952. Like, holy shit. Like, holy shit. And there does just come a point where I'm like, man, do we ever deserve it? Do we ever deserve what's coming our way? Do we ever deserve what's coming our way? That I'm just getting to a point in my life now, like I'm literally like a couple of weeks away now from turning 40. And I'm straight up just looking at this place, just being like, I'm not rooting for this. Like I'm not rooting for humanity. Like, not if it's going to be like this. Not if it's not even going to try. Like, imagine if you were like the biggest fan of a sports team, and every time they took to the field, they all just sat down and like they didn't kick the ball or even try to make plays or anything. That's basically what I'm looking at. We're just a lame duck species, an evolutionary dead end. And we're all just trying to deal with it. Right? Like, we're all just trying to deal with it. Just trying to make it through. Make it through to the other side. Yeah. Raven, you should pop over to the YouTube chat. The YouTube chat is what I respond to more than TikTok. Because I find that the TikTok can get really overwhelmed and really taken over. YouTube descriptions in the it's in the thing. It's in the gibber. And one of the things I think about all the time about, like, us being alive in this moment and at this time is like we are culturally backwards. There's just no other way to describe it. Like, everything we think about reality is the opposite of what it is. As a people, we're like that. And we're afraid of everything. And it's why we put up all these fronts and all this bravado and all this it's why these debate bros are like, debate me, bro, let's go, get on Discord, debate me, bro, so that, because they think that they're going to win with bravado. They think that they're just going to say a bunch of words, right? They've seen what these debate bros do, and they think that that's intelligent. And it's just like, I'm not going to participate in that. Like, it's just nonsense, right? You watch these guys like Vosh and Destiny and all these idiots, right? And what they're doing is just talking really fast over one another. And they don't actually have anything interesting or useful to say, right? Like, their position is basically U.S. imperialism is good, and we're just going to have a disagreement on, whether or not, like, what is a woman? Like, that's essentially where these guys are at. Like, it's this sort of pseudo leftist thought that doesn't really go much further outside of the Democratic Party, which is the goal, right? To just funnel people into these dead end projects. And it's I just don't even know what to make of it anymore. Like, has there ever been a moment in our history as a species where we have actually said the way that we are saying now, that we should make life worse for our children? That I know that when I was growing up, there was always this general sense and this general idea that life should be better for the next generation. And one assumes that part of making life better for the next generation is to make it so they don't need to work as hard, and that things are easier. But this whole ideology seems to have, or this whole idea, it's not even an ideology, like, this whole idea has just kind of vanished. The idea that life should be easier for the next generation has been replaced with this idea that we should make things as hard as possible for them. It's pretty staggering to watch. Like, the generation that literally launched a free love movement is now going on is now exiting the scene during a period of sexual repression that I think you got to go back to like the 1700s to duplicate. Like, we're that's the strangest thing about humanity right now. Like, that's the strangest thing about humanity right now. We've got this internet. We have the internet. And the internet has opened up a mass consciousness and a window into our mass consciousness that we can't deny. That we've created this like odd kind of safe space for humanity to vomit itself within, that we can look at and have it reflect back onto us, and we can see it. And this, once you realize that the internet is once you decommodify the internet, once the internet is not just for commodification, and you start looking at it from the position of the artist as a reflection of humanity, and then you juxtapose that reflection upon what is actually happening in the society, and it's interesting that there are differences. That's something that I think is so strange about humanity and about people, that we obviously want the world to be one way, and the world that we live in is a different way. And we don't seem to be able to reconcile that and reconcile those differences, because I think we're just scared little monkeys. That it's one thing to live this digital life on the internet, and then it's another to actually live that life in reality and manifest it into reality. And I really do think it's just we don't have a grip on our emotional selves. We're not really capable, especially in the West. But I worry that it's across the board, that we're not really capable as a species of grabbing hold of our emotional selves and seeing the world for what it is, and understanding that, like, this game we're playing of extraction and abandonment, that it's extracting a resource from an area, enslaving the population to extract the resource, and once the resource is extracted, abandon it and completely leave it in the dust, and extract as much labor value as you can out of Detroit, right? Extract as much as you can until you can move somewhere else and extract their labor value somewhere else for cheaper. Just abandon it. And this game that we're playing, this extremely self-destructive game that we're playing, is being done in pursuit of the accumulation of money that we all that we created in the first place. That's the joke. Like, that's the joke, you know? Like, that's the joke. Is that it's so obvious that we're worshiping a god. Like, it's so clear that we are that we have erected this god as an idol for, and the person who accumulates the most god points, the most money, is supposed to be the king of reality, supposed to be the king of this place. But none of that matters at all. Like, it's completely and utterly irrelevant to what it is to be alive in the world. That the wealthy believe that they're living this higher existence because they're able to boss people around and exert their will into this reality because of these god dollars that they've accumulated. But it's all nothing. It's all bullshit. That we arise from the energy that sustains and spawns us, randomly generated into the world. Here we are. We're here for a flashing moment. And instead of looking at one another in a stable environment and asking a simple question, what is this place? Why are we here? What is this for? can we explore it? What does it mean to explore this place? Can we explore ourselves? Instead of doing any of that, we're literally burning it all down so that we can, what? Exactly. Drive cars? That seems to be the big thing. That seems to be the big thing. Like I think that if you tried to take cars away from people, there would be a serious war if you tried to take cars away from people. People love cars. Cars are important, for sure. Like we're literally willing to rip up the entire face of the planet and just scar it with these highways, right? If it means we get cars. It's like we want to turn the place into a theme park, right? That we all get to just interact with whenever we like. As long as I got cars and burgers, right? Then this place is dandy. This is fine. I'll work a 40-hour work week, barely get my bills paid. But as long as I get my beer and my burger and get to drive on the interstate, everything's totally fine. like I don't know you guys. Yeah, Americans love to shop and eat. Well, it's how they've defined themselves spiritually. Like that's the truth of it. Like we have cut ourselves off from each other. Like this ethos of hyper individualism. Like that is by definition an expression that we are all separate from one another, and that what you are experiencing and what I am experiencing are different, and one is superior to the other. And that's the whole meritocracy hierarchical thinking, that there is such a thing as a superior life, that and that when we all get to the end and die, that there'll be a scoreboard or something, right? Like that's what's so hilarious to me is the scorekeeping, as if the person that dies with the highest bank account is gonna what? Like you'll get a plaque or something. Maybe they'll make a bust of you, like they did for Dick Cheney, right? Maybe they'll carve your face into the side of a mountain, right? That means you won, right? That means that you won. And it's just this overwhelming, like every time I leave my apartment and every time I look around at what's doing, I'm just like, what in the fuck? What in the fuck are we doing? What in the fuck is anybody actually doing? And it's just a lot of fucking busy work. There's a lot of fucking busy work where you just have like rich, bored people who literally do not know what to do with their money. Just throwing it into the world. And everybody has to respond to this. Everyone has to respond to this. To be fair, cars for a lot of people are just a means of transportation. I mean, and what's crazy to me, CR Strifey, is when you actually do, like, I've seen there are organizations that are interested in like mass transit as a solution, and they'll do cost assessments, and they'll be like, yeah, we spend like double the amount on personal cars and personal vehicles than it would cost us to actually have a robust transportation system, right? And so this idea of individualism, right? And I gotta tell you, I think I've seen people who have cars, and I take the transit, and if somebody gave me a car, I wouldn't take it. Like, it seems to me to be a complete and total burden. So like, they keep talking about how it's the freedom and it's all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, freedom for what? Freedom to do what? Freedom for who? Freedom for what? It just seems like it's a money sink. It's a cost sink. It's a time sink for the most part. Also, that at any moment you can pop in and go get a fucking burger at Wendy's or something. Content, the people who made fun of you for being poor and slamming communism, I would love to get a material assessment of their living situation. They live with their parents. That's it. Like, they live with their parents. Like, like you if you don't know anything, then you can say what you like. Yeah, most of America is just a car-centric city. Well, America went through, like, the interstate system was like a huge deal, right? Like, you just need to listen to, like, most American music throughout that period. And it's all about, like, being on the road, and like, Bruce Springsteen, is all of his music is about that, is about being free on the road and free to drive around and all of this, right? Like, and then on the other side of it, like the angsty side of it, is like Metallica, where, like, they're driving the truck on the road, right, on a long and dusty highway, like, all of this, like it's the car culture. I come from, like, rural Manitoba has it too, right? This just car culture, and everything is about having a car and fixing cars, and everybody has, like, a little car side project or any of this kind of shit. It's crazy. Could mass transpo really reach people in rural Ontario that need to get a job in a city? I mean, and we touch on, like, there's this. I find it really annoying that the only way we can imagine a solution to poverty or a solution to the desperation of the people is to get them a job. Like, it's, in my view, it's trying to fix a problem by creating another problem. That, like, we have, like, what happens? What happens if all of the work gets automated? And you're still walking around saying everyone needs to get a job. Well, what do you do with this? Like, this, in my view, is where it is the dead center of why there is a massive crisis happening in this country. Is that we are looking at a generation of kids and a generation of people who want to be creative, who want to be inventive, who want to engage in the world, who want to do these sorts of things, but they're told, go work at Tim Hortons. Like, that's what we're doing. And instead of actually giving them the resources that they need in order to actually make any discoveries or put anything together or actually figure anything out, the best that we will do as our failed society, we'll give them a loan. But that loan comes with a demand of productivity towards an aim that does not yet exist. And, like, the most creative and inventive people who have ever walked this plane of reality, the most inventive and creative people that ever existed, were doing so because they had the leisure time and they had the ability to pursue the things that they were interested in. Right? Like, Isaac Newton wasn't also working in a cafe. Right? Like, Charles Darwin wasn't also a janitor. You know? Like, we are taking a generate, like, William Shakespeare wasn't writing his plays while also bussing tables. Like, we are living in a society where we are saying to an entire generation of people, And now it's several generations of people that, if you want to participate meaningfully in the society, well, you better do it as a side hustle. And so we're creating this barbaric, backwards culture that can't actually get anywhere or do anything because everything funnels into stupid dead ends. And if you go to school to like become a biologist or to do something that's important, well, the only job that a capitalist will pay you to do is to get a sharper purple color hair dye or something. Let's get those seeds out of those watermelons, right? Because all of our initiative and all of our energy and everything we are and everything we do, every decision that gets made has to be funneled through this one little checkpoint that is the limited whims and imagination of the worst people in the society, who have never worked a job, who are extraordinarily stupid and dim-witted, and who are basically just con men. And so when you're constantly having to ask these worthless parasites if you can have permission to be creative, well, what do you think is going to happen? And so instead of doing that, we could create a society that says, hey, you have an idea, you have a thought, you have something interesting that you want to pursue, do it. That's not what we do. It's not who we are. And so we're going to dramatically fall behind. We're going to dramatically fall behind cultures that have decided instead. Like, do you know what happens in China? Like, straight up. Like, what happens in China is that the Chinese academies go, we want to know about quantum computing. And we want to know about it because we want to know about it. Like, sure, there's the idea that we could create a product to sell, I suppose. And there's that whole profit motive and all that, sure, I guess. But we want to investigate quantum computing because we want to investigate it. And we're curious about it. And we want to know more. And so you know what they do? They take their students and their graduates and all this kind of stuff and they do it. And the government goes, yeah, like put those people in a room to do that, to just learn about the subject. And they just do it. And it spits shit out, and it spits shit out, and it spits shit out. And it's like worthless, useless, who knows what's going on, all this kind of stuff. But you know what it's ending up doing? You know what it's already doing? The United States military is deathly afraid of the advances that the Chinese military has made in quantum computing. And they're deathly afraid of it because they know that if the Chinese actually implement this quantum computing into their military systems, they will be unassailable. That if the US shoots a rocket at China, China will be able to hack that rocket and blow it up in midair. Because quantum computers are 10 times faster than the computers we have. And have the potential to get as fast as 100 times faster. And it's not like the Chinese are sharing that information with us. And so part of the reason why all the anti-China rhetoric is ramping up is because the United States military knows that it has a window of opportunity. And once that window of opportunity passes, China will be unassailable. They literally will not be able to send military against China. Because China will hack their shit and blow it up. Or disable it, at least. Like, that's what they're worried about. That's what this quote unquote cybersecurity shit is all about. Like, and the Chinese are advancing so swiftly because their systems aren't wrapped up in this moronic idea that, well, you got to get a job. They say, you know what your job is? Your job is sitting in a room and finding out what this is. Whereas we say, oh, well, your job is making hair dye. And you got to make a product to sell to snot-nosed 14-year-old kids and their detached moms. Like, literally, if you can't sell it to wine moms, then it's not a thing. It's not successful. Like, that's what we're doing. Right? So we're making big advances in hair dye. Yeah, I like it, Cotton. Slamming capitalism. Like, how okay are they? Are they scared of rent? Yeah, no, like, they're kids. That's all. They're just kids. Like, I'm sorry, if you're actually walking around calling yourself a libertarian, like, you don't know what's going on in the world. For real. Like, this is my genuine opinion of libertarians, and why I'm actually quite patient with them. Because I just think that they're largely clueless. Like, I don't think any of them actually pay rent. I don't think any of them actually, like, live in the world in a capacity that actually matters. That if I were to debate bro them, I think I would find out I'm talking to a 14-year-old. Or someone that has the intellectual capacity of one. CR Strifey, I was talking about a job they already have. The funds their life, not a job they have to get. Sorry, what was the original comment, dude? Could mass transit really reach people in rural that need a good job to a city? Look, yeah. Honestly, CR Strifey, yes. Like, you take a look at what's gone on in China. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy what has gone on in China. Like, you just need to go to Google Maps and just zoom in. Like, all of this came up in about, like, 20 years. Right? Like, 20 to 30 years, China just decided that they wanted to build mass transit systems. And the reason why they decided they wanted to build mass transit systems is because they understand that mass transit is actually a unifying project. Like, it's incredibly unifying to have mass transit systems that connect provinces, right? Like, historically, what happens in China is China has fallen apart several times, right, over its history. You take a look at, like, the Ming Dynasty, the Qing Dynasty, all these kinds of things. Like, they have these dynastic periods. Well, between those dynastic periods, China basically devolves into just being separate provinces, right? That once the administrative power of China falls apart, you end up with a power center in Beijing, one in Shanghai, one here, and they're all ruled by families and warlords and all that kind of classic feudal shit that we're all at least vaguely aware of. And the Chinese Communist Party, being Marxists, are completely aware of this history and understand that one of the ways to prevent the collapse of an empire or of a federated system into feudalism, into this warlord tribism again, is to have large unifying projects that connect it. Like, you take a look at this, and then you take a look at what's happened here. Right? It doesn't take a fucking genius to figure this out. Like, that we could have a more robust, more and incidentally, like, all of this, right? Not all of this, obviously, but a great deal of this. They have something like 30,000, I think it's 30,000 kilometers of high-speed rail, right? We haven't built high-speed rail. We don't have a mile of high-speed rail built. We don't have a kilometer of high-speed rail built. And China's still building rail. What do we do instead? We listen to fucking grifters like Elon Musk, who's trying to sell us on, like, Hyperloop or some dumb bullshit. Like, we absolutely could do this. It's completely possible. Why can't we? Right? What's stopping us? Well, it's very obvious what's stopping us. Let's say you wanted to run a rail from Ottawa to Montreal. Right? It's insane that there isn't already a rail that runs from Ottawa to Montreal. Right? Or like Toronto to Ottawa. Again, it's completely insane that that rail doesn't already exist. Well, let's say you wanted to do it. Well, so you'd have to announce it. Well, okay. What do you think the capitalists are going to do the minute you announce it? They're going to buy up all the land. That's what happened here in the Greenbelt, right? That all the capitalists bought up all the Greenbelt line. Why do you think Doug Ford wants to develop it? Because his buddies bought the land. And so you announce the building of a rail, the capitalists buy up all the land, you go to start buying the land in order to actually do it, right? And the land is 10 times its value. And so it throws a wrench into the project. And this happens over and over and over again, right? You can see this with like the pipelines, right? Every single time a project is announced, it always ends up being 10 times the price because fucking worthless capitalists get involved and jack up the price. And they jack up the price because they know that their surrogates in the government will do it. But it slows the process down. So instead of having enormous high-speed rail get built easily, right? You end up with this dumb shit. And we're just going to, like, it's what's so embarrassing about, like, the people who come in and, like, start swaggering their cock around like this and start talking about stuff that happened in the fucking 50s. Like, the shit that's happening right now, like, it's going to get so obvious. It's going to get so obvious that we are falling behind dramatically. Falling behind the rest of the world. And I think that there will be wake-up moments when people start to go, like, oh my God, like, we are a backwater. And I think part of those wake-up moments are going to be when places like India start to experience this same similar kind of growth. When places in Africa start to experience that similar kind of growth. Like, we're going to see the rise of the global South. And America knows it. And they're terrified of it. They're desperately terrified of it. And the only solution they have is more militarism and more military. It's all they know how to do. It's all they make. Personal transportation is not the way of the future, no matter how efficient it is. Yeah, it can never be as efficient as a high-speed rail taking every person stuck in traffic to where they want to go. Yeah, like, just in terms of how much space it occupies. Straight up, like, just take a look at, like, how much space does a train car take up versus how much space does the same amount of cars take up. Like, that's all you need to see. You don't need to go through some big calculation or something. Like, it's pretty clear. Like, if you want to move 1 million people, cars is just not the way to do it. It's just not the fucking way to do it. Prodigal. Most American railroads are not owned. Are owned BT cargo trains, so high speed cannot be used on them. Also, the track in American R2 is just so important. Yeah. Well, and this is the other part of it, Prodigal, is that, like, a lot of these companies. So you think about, like, the Texas Power Grid. The Texas Power Grid's a great example of this. Like, why does the Texas Power Grid keep going down? Why is it a piece of shit? It's because it's essentially a series of privatized lines that are controlled by a cartel. And that cartel has absolutely no incentive whatsoever to upgrade or maintain the lines in meaningful ways, right? And what happens every single time there's an outage or every single time there's a problem is that they get bailed out, right? So the government, because there's a crisis and the people want it resolved, so the government will just hand them a shit ton of money. And so why would they ever? I can't imagine why anyone would ever try to improve the lines or upgrade the lines or do it on their own dime when the government's just going to bail me out every single time it fails anyway. So who gives a shit? Right? It's the same thing that happened in the 2008 financial collapse. Like, why is the economy going to shit now? Why is everything so shitty? Because the capitalists learned their lesson that the government will just bail them out. So they don't need to be responsible. They don't need to know anything. They don't need to do anything. They don't need to be intelligent. They don't need to make good decisions. They can literally rip this thing apart, and the government will just bail them out like they did in 2008, which is exactly what's going to happen, by the way. Like, that's exactly what's going to happen. Because it's exactly what the system is designed to do now. Right? Reminding everybody at this point that Mussolini said that fascism is better called corporatism because it's the merger of business and state. That if it was the church and the state acting this way, we'd all be calling it a theocracy. But it's business and state. And so we're better off calling it fascism, because that's what it is. And there are going to be dramatic moments. I think it will be once the military force of the United States has finally depleted itself meaningfully, where they can't actually, like, they already can't meaningfully challenge China. That's already done. That the Chinese military is big enough and strong enough now that the Americans might win the first volley. But the truth is that the Chinese productive capacity is so much better than the Americans, because the Americans sold it to them. Like, that's what's crazy to think about. Like, I play a game called Civilization, right? It's a game about building a civilization. It's not perfect, obviously, but it's like a simulation game or whatever. And while you're doing it, there's a moment where you build like industrial zones. So you'd have like your city, Orlando, and you'd build a little industrial zone in Orlando. You'd be like, here you go, Orlando, you can have an industrial zone. There you are. And that means that you get more industry, right? You can create things better. And every so often you can spit things out, and we'll make a military unit here or something, right? Well, what we did over the neoliberal period was to take those industrial zones and move them. And where did they go? Like, that's what we did. That's what we did. We moved them all to China. And it's insane. It's insane what we've done. That we created an industrial base in China while destroying our own. And we did it so that we could get more fake money dollars that we invented in the first place. Hey Andre, how you doing, bud? I haven't done the number draw in forever. I'm not going to do it tonight. Like, it's just a joke, isn't it? It's just a joke. Like, it's just... I'm looking over here. There's a person named Casey in TikTok who says, I really do enjoy your animosity towards these atrocious human beings. And it's just like... I find it pretty staggering that, like, somehow we have managed to create a society where if you stand up and say, hey, pedophilia is wrong, and the people who own the society are pedophiles, or at least are turning a blind eye to the obvious pedophile sex ring that exists at the highest echelons of the society, right? If you point it out, somehow you're the bad guy. Like, that's the nature of the society we live in, right? It's unbelievable. States and Canada know the consequences of moving industry to China. Do they? I don't think they do, bro. Like, I really don't think they do. Like, I think that maybe they're coming to terms with it now, but when they were doing it, I don't think that they really understood what they were doing. I think that they genuinely thought more money equal good. I really think that's it. You think they're secretly owned by them? Again, dude, like, it's not possible to keep those kinds of secrets. It's really not. Like just the organizational scale of it alone. Right? The organizational scale of it alone is way you can't keep it secret. What's the difference about communism now and before? I mean, communism is constantly in a state of flux. I think the Chinese have shown that being a fundamentalist about communist ideas, it doesn't work. The Dengist period showed us that you want to interact successfully with the rest of the world, and if the rest of the world is capitalist, you have to have a section of your economy also be capitalist. I think that the Chinese understood that a lot more than the Soviets understood. Although I think the Soviets kind of understood it theoretically. I think that the Chinese actually understand it and do that. And communism in Southeast Asia is in a very exciting place at the moment. And also South America is in a very exciting place at the moment because they're not being blown up. That, like, you think about the Nixon era, right? Like, Southeast Asia was completely destroyed. And literally they said it to quote unquote staunch the spread of communism, right? C.R. Shriver says, I don't think so. They'll never go to war with China because too much of their economy depends on China. I don't know. Biden is telling Americans that you got to leave China or else be part of China. They're literally building nuclear submarines in the South Chinese Sea. You are basing a lot of your opinion on the idea that America is rational, and it isn't. Like really, it isn't. It really does, like, operate like a wild animal. And when it says what it believes, that is what it believes. Like, and like these people genuinely believe in angels and shit. Like George Bush was a fundamentalist Christian. Like, he said he was launching a crusade and he believed it. Opinion on Rothschilds? They're just another scummy group of bankers. That's all. Like, people like to give the Rothschilds a lot of chutzpah, but the truth is that they're just a scummy group of bankers, just like the rest of them. They're not special. They're smarter than the rest of them because they stay out of the spotlight, right? That's the brilliance of the Rothschilds. Is they keep themselves out of the news and they keep themselves out of the conversation, right? They just quietly infect financial markets. They just quietly keep themselves part of all of these systems because they know that as long as they're like their strategy is very much like David Thompson, the wealthiest Canadian, right? Just own 10% of everything. That's it. Like, I'm sure that they have some sick pedophilic shit going on, but like, I think that their whole strategy is just own 10% of everything, right? Or at this point, like, the Rothschilds are a little bit different because they've been around a lot longer. They could probably only own 1% of everything and be fine, right? Do you think Trump could fix USA? No. I think that Trump is interested in being the president, and that's it. I don't think he has any ambition or vision or goal beyond just being the president. In many ways, I actually think that that's kind of what saves us from the worst idea of what Trump could have been. Because I don't think that Trump has any vision or ambition outside of being the president. right? I don't think he saw the presidency as like the presidency was the end for him. That he didn't see it as the means to the end. That becoming the president was the goal and was the end. And you can see that reflected in something as simple as how often he went golfing. Right? He was not a man, and he's not a president who was interested in using his power to do anything. I'm sure that he was happy to go to the meetings and do all this stuff and be the president, but really he was just kind of like a cosplay president, I don't think he actually wanted to do anything. What did he actually do? He lowered taxes for himself. And by extension, other rich people. But, I don't think he, sometimes people on the right will say, well, he didn't get involved in a lot of turmoil. And all that. Yeah, because he didn't want to. Because he didn't want to do anything. This is a guy who's literally saying, America should pull out of NATO. He doesn't want to be involved. And he's not competent. He just wants to be the president. And I respect why people back Trump, and I respect why they do it, because they view him as just at least it's what Dave Chappelle said at his most recent thing. I think that's accurate. He's the honest liar. At least he's admitting that the system is rigged. Trebek, I'm over time, but I'm gonna lay it all out for you, okay? As I see this happening, okay? And of course, I'm just one man. I'm just one voice, so don't take this as gospel truth. But this is what I see what happens, and I don't see any force in the United States or in the Western world that's actually trying to prevent it. So I don't see how it goes any other way. Which is that the United States is going to go through a period of balkanization. And what that means is that Texas and California and probably some of the southern states are going to break off from the Union, right? That once this balkanization process begins to occur, it's going to snowball. There's going to be a snowballing effect. That's why Brexit was such a big fucking deal, right? Because there are fears throughout the United States and throughout Europe that the United States is going to begin to balkanize. And I think it's very straightforward how it happens. I don't think it happens on ideological principles or anything like that. I think that as the process of extraction and abandonment continues, and it is a project, it's being done on purpose, as it continues, Americans are just going to look at their paycheck and be like, what is this line where I'm losing 20 to 30% of my pay to the federal government? What is that actually buying me? What am I getting for that? And the answer is that you're getting little Palestinian skeletons, right? Bombs dropping on Somalia, right? You're getting endless, godless war. That's what you're getting, right? You're earning nothing but the hatred of the rest of the world, right? That's what you're getting. That's what that line is. And if you're not seeing a return on that, well, all it's going to take is somebody to be like, well, why are we paying that? We shouldn't. And people the independence movement's already on the ballot in Texas and California. It's as high as 40% in most states. There is a sense that we should declare independent and separate from the Union. You're seeing in Oklahoma, the Supreme Court is ceding territory back to First Nations people, right? That the administrative authority and power of the federal government is waning throughout the Union. And all it's really going to take is a major state, a major state. Like California is the one I'm actually looking at. Like Texas is the one that everyone would be like, yeah, of course, Texas. But I actually do think it is going to be California. Because California is a state it's the third largest economy on the continent. It's trying desperately to get into the next economy, into the what's being called the green economy, right? It's trying to build high-speed rail. It's trying to do this. And what's their number one impediment? The federal government. And so I really do think it is just a matter of time before California and Californians just go, fuck this. What do we need these people for? Fuck off. And they just decide to do it by themselves. And honestly, from the perspective of California, they'd be better off doing that. That the rest of the country is basically dead weight for California. And California would be just better off splitting off and doing its own thing. The question is whether or not they can successfully manage to defend themselves against military excursion and invasion. That's the question. Like, will California actually have the military presence to be able to protect themselves? Well, yeah, because they have a police force that's armed to the teeth. Right? Like, if you treated the police forces in America as a military force, they would be the third largest military. So America has the largest military, then it's China, and then it would be the American police forces. And so it'd be very difficult to actually invade California and all of that. And so as that balkanization process begins, and the federal government the federal government loses administrative authority, these states are going to go to war with each other, right? As they've done in the past, right? There was a civil war. And it's likely that they'll do it again. And in the meantime, can't forget, right? So NATO is predicated on the idea that America's in charge, that Big Daddy NATO is in charge. Well, already there's grumblings that NATO should disband, and already there's grumblings that America should not be involved in NATO. Well, can anybody think of a time in history when these countries went to war with each other? I can. Right? When I get talking about a wake-up moment for people, that the system of capital has failed, it will be the war that happens in America and the war that happens in Europe. That there will be a lot of people, a lot of these dim-witted idiots who are wandering into my chat jerking off about capitalism, will have their mouths shut by the internal war that falls upon these countries. Because that's the only way capitalism knows how to solve its problems, is through war. And we've seen it before. We'll see it again. And it's going to happen a lot sooner than you think. Because these capitalist nations don't know how to reform themselves. They don't know how to solve problems. And they're not interested in it. That's why I always say I would rather live in a country that was trying to solve its problems and failing than live in a country that was not trying to solve its problems and succeeding. Well, I'm over time. We've reached the end. God bless you all for being here. I hope you're all doing well out in the world. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.